Kevin Wesley versus the Cosmological Argument. Let's get it. Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Project, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the world. What's good? What's popping? Happy Bodega Eve, everyone. Let's see who's in the chat. We got Bodega Lady D New. We got Val Johnson in the building. We got Wawo in the building. Jonathan Green on the check-in. We got Adrian Jones, Sean Jackson, MJ Jackson, Ty Hammer. Yeah, man. Please, please, please. Tell a friend to tell a friend. That's him again. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to support the ministry, you can hit me on PayPal, or if you'd like to be a monthly supporter, you could become a patron where you get all assorted delicacies and pastries and treats of all sorts. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you one half of the EPMD of Urban Apologetics, Mr. True ID himself, Adam Coleman. What's going on, sir?
Yeah. Did I do it right?
You did it right, sir.
That sound like a real New Yorker?
You sound
man,
like
you know, hey, man, I was in New York, about a week or so ago. You know what I mean? I don't think I told you this. So I'm pulling up to, I don't even know what bridge I'm on. Y'all got, I don't know how many bridges out there. You know what I'm saying? But I know I'm driving into the city. I'm headed towards Queens, and I get up to the toll booth, right? The guy doesn't even look me in the eye. He just hands me my change for the 20, and he just in this trance just nodded his head to shook once. I'm saying, just blasting as loud as he possibly can. I'm like, you know what? I'm definitely in New York right now.
Very good.
I'm definitely in New York right now, man. I felt at home. You know what I'm saying? In the New York
I'm glad my city
embraced
you with open arms.
Right.
Now, we like, doing the EPMD thing. And, historically, EPMD introduced one of the greatest lyricists of all time. We're talking about, Redman, Reggie Noble.
Sure.
And, going along with the theme, we have our own Reggie Noble in the building. We got Alex McELROY in the building, the Redman of Urban Apologetics.
I don't know if I want that side of it.
The Redman of Urban Apologetics.
Oh,
yes. That's what I'm talking
What's going on, Alex?
Oh, man,
yeah, man. I see Michelle say I'm working hard tonight. I'm working hard tonight.
Double duty. Yes.
This whole week, so I had Dr. Mason on Tuesday. Just got done with Jonathan Pritchett. That was a great discussion, and I'm glad to be here. This is my wheelhouse. This is what I like to talk about. So
right. That's what we want you here. Actually, both you and Adam. This is what you guys do. So
this is fun, man. Yeah.
And what we're about to do is, talk apologetics, right? But we're gonna do it within the vein. We're doing two things at once, basically, right? Because we really want to encourage the young lady who did this video. Who just became a believer. Her name escapes me right now. She was in I
had to look it up. Yeah,
she was in the TV series Black Lightning.
Yeah, China. I got to get her last name. I just looked it up earlier to make sure I had it right.
Can somebody put her name in the chat, please? Anyone? And she decided, she really wanted to make, Jesus Lord. And I don't know what transpired, why she felt like she couldn't maintain her walk with God and be a part of this TV series. Because we have, all right, I see what's going on. All right, so but she felt, I guess, convicted that she couldn't do that and not compromise her faith. So I have to, salute
McClain, China McClain. There we go.
So we salute her, and she's being very forthright with her love for God and really trying to basically, be an apologist in a sense, and she has a platform. Yeah, and she wants to use it for God, and I have to salute her for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
but I think Black Lightning got canceled. I think
it did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because she had another video where I heard it got canceled or something like that.
It was a little corny, but man, it was black.
Oh, it was mega black.
it was blackety black. Like it was like they was not playing. Like they tackled black issues like crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was black.
But you know, and as somebody who's young in the faith, you know, she definitely tried to articulate this particular argument that we're going to talk about. And Mr. Kevin Wesley decided to put his 2 cents on her presentation.
That's about what it's worth.
Got him.
Reggie Noble's
with the
good,
game. Reggie Noble, let's go.
You know what I mean?
Let's go.
Headbuster. But you know, and for those who might not know who Kevin Wesley is a quote unquote ex-pastor. And I say air quotes because has he ever said exactly where he pastored at?
No, I think he actually kind of, I'm trying to be charitable, but he somewhat walked it back a little bit. I think he changed it maybe to ex-minister, and he just kind of stopped, you know, with that whole, you know, thing altogether. You know what I'm saying? Because the ex-pastor thing, I don't think he could uphold that with any kind of integrity. So I think he stopped, you know, saying it for that reason. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about that.
Right. About that, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, his claim to fame is supposedly being an ex-pastor, and once he became enlightened with the true knowledge, he left the Christian faith, and now he's this spiritual life coach, right? And he's garnered quite the following, and you know he is an apologist against Christianity, and he decided to use this critique of this young lady's video as a way of exposing the flaws within believing in a God, you know, and specifically the God, the Bible. So I've just said a whole mouthful. Alex, what is your initial thoughts of the video when you first saw it?
So when I see stuff like that, you know, I can't, it takes me a long time because I take notes on almost every word. So, but I say that because my initial thoughts is he Googled some terms to sound smart and then even didn't get the terms right. So my initial thought was his audience asked him to do it, right? That's how he framed it.
Right.
So they're looking to this dude who has no, I don't think he has any theological training. He definitely has no training in science and specifically in physics and or philosophy, but they're looking to him as his guru. And that's what scares me, not about him per se, but about this world, the way we live, where we deify these celebrities. And that's in the church too, where we think because somebody's famous, that equals gnosis, that equals knowledge. And that's just it's a non sequitur. Those two things don't coincide. And so then we'll get into it. He got so much wrong, but the only way you know it is if you know the truth. It's not my truth. It's not even necessarily theological. We're going to talk a lot of science today. He didn't get none of it right.
Right.
So what are you going to do?
And I mean, it's and again, we're not trying to be malicious. You know, Mr. Wesley has never done anything to me personally.
Me neither.
But since you want to address,
he didn't come at me though. I might
we'll come to you in a minute. I understand that. That. But but again, I don't want people to misunderstand what we're doing here. We're here to one, dismantle his critique, and two, really give a robust understanding of the argument. You know, because the young lady definitely, wanted to represent. What we want to do is really unpack and give a more robust argument that she was trying to convey. And again, much love to her. Yep. Much courage she had to profess her faith, and clearly she's been doing some study.
Yep.
It was pretty obvious. Actually, I was interestingly enough. So I was in New York about a week or so ago teaching with an organization called Maven. And basically what we do is it's basically kind of like a vacation Bible school. People know what that is, kind of laced with apologetics, where you kind of take some teens and whatnot and teach kids about apologetics and worldview and so on and so forth. And so anyway, my guy, Tim Stratton, was there and he came across the video with China McClain first. He showed it to me. He's like, oh man, check this out. It sounds like she's making the cosmological argument, the Kalam argument, I was like, okay, word, that's definitely dope. And it was funny because I think we saw it the night after an actor that we had come out to speak to the kids. My guy, man, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank now. That's terrible. Harry Lennox, goodness gracious. Harry Lennox that came out to speak to the kids, and he was talking about how difficult it is in some respects to be a Christian in Hollywood. And then we came across her video. So I can kind of just kind of putting the pieces together. I can see, she's really grappling with that. Like she's trying to, shore up her worldview and really build a solid base. And much respect to her for that. And she's being vocal about it. So, right. I mean, you can't hate on that at all, man.
Absolutely not.
That's dope.
Now, Mr. Coleman, you and Mr. Wesley do have a history.
We do.
So,
we do.
Would you care to share some of the history, the backstory here?
Well, yeah, man. So Kevin Wesley was actually one of the first, not the first, but he's one of the first, pseudo scholars or just kind of pseudo YouTubers, whatever the term might be. Actually, I retract that. I'm saying? I'm not even going to call him that. You know what I'm saying? But he was the first person I came across that I saw regularly putting out false information via YouTube, particularly in the African American context. I'll just say it that way. You know what I'm saying? And so, I confronted him. I mean, honestly, people kind of know how I do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, if I have an opportunity to reach out to somebody and I feel like there's a problem, or they're teaching something false, if I have an opportunity to reach out to them, then I'm going to do that. Now, at that time, I was mostly engaging people on Facebook. And I kind of joke around sometimes. I'm not endorsing this or whatever, but I don't know if people kind of remember back when Meek Mills was battling like Reed Dollars back in the day. You know what I mean? That was kind of like me and my Facebook phase. You know what I'm saying? When I was, when I first got into apologetics, it was like the dirty braids, Meek Mills on the street corner battling. I would just show up in the chat room and wherever it was popping off, I was there to do damage. That's what I was doing. So anyway, I figuratively speaking. So anyway. It was kind of during that phase when I came across Kevin Wesley. So when he would say something crazy about Christianity, I was on it, man. I was on the thread, and we had some exchanges back and forth. And there was some times where he blocked me out of a chat. Eventually blocked me just in general. I guess I'm still blocked, I assume. But blocked me out of some of his forums and things like that. And I'll just say that he knows who Adam Coleman is. I'll just put it there.
I like that.
You know what I mean? He knows what it is. You know what I mean? And he's been very hesitant to engage me directly for a long time. I'll just put it that way.
Hesitant?
Yeah, I'll just put it that way. But interestingly enough, he did do a video some years ago, actually, about me and Jerome Gay, where he did a breakdown of our video, a video that me and Jerome Gay did. And I was actually going to do a response to it, and then my camera got stolen. You know what I'm saying? And so for a long time, I didn't have a camera to really do some stuff. So he kind of dodged the bullet on that one.
Yeah.
But now that I'm back in full effect, I might have to reach back to the archives and go get that joint, you know what I'm saying, and address it. I think I probably will now that I think about it.
Now, listen, so, yeah. If most of us in the chat know Adam is a sweetheart of a guy. He really is. But he wasn't so sweet in that chat. Let me tell you. He pulled up like, yo, what's good, fam? What's up? Right. He's tapping his pockets and everything. I'm like, dang, Adam's going on.
I mean, so now I'm full disclosure. You know what I'm saying? People kind of know, like when it comes to me, like one-on-one, if somebody's coming at me crazy, I really don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like it's very few things you can say to me that's really gonna tick me off. You know what I'm saying? I don't like it when I see people bullying Christians. I'm saying I really don't like that. If I come into a chat room and I feel like somebody who's an atheist or whatever perspective, it really doesn't matter. If I feel like they're bullying Christians and being condescending and stuff, hey, that's when the daggers come out. I mean, to be honest with you, and I felt like that's kind of how he was coming at it. I felt like he was playing people. You know what I'm saying? So it's like if that's what MJ Jackson. I don't know if I would call it a mean streak. You know what I'm saying? It might be, but you could be aggressive when need be. I mean, it's there. If that's what it has to be, that's what it has to be.
I ain't a killer, certainly don't push me.
Right.
Exactly. That's exactly.
I mean, right. But sometimes you got to do that. I mean, if for the sake of those who are kind of onlookers, sometimes you have to come out like that, just to let people know that, hey, you know what I'm saying? MJ's
messy.
MJ started something in the chat, man. That's what's up. But anyway.
All right, cool. So I was thinking what we could do if you gentlemen could kind of almost do an elevator pitch of the argument, and then as we watch the video, we slowly unpack more of the actual argument. So the argument is the cosmological argument. So and we'll start with Alex. So, Alex, what's the basic breakdown? What is the argument in itself trying to convey?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I haven't been able to talk about it because they haven't told me when we can release it. But I'm working with Reasonable Faith, doing a series of videos, and the first one they had me to do, which obviously William Lane Craig, like, he didn't make the argument, but he popularized it. He finished it, and that was what we did. We to kind of bring the terminology down, we just called it the bridge of faith, and we connected the dots. But here's the point: there's three main ways of argumentation: deductive, inductive, and abductive. A deductive argument is, by most accounts, the strongest. But a deductive argument says this: if the premises are true, if they're sound and valid, and we don't have to get into all the philosophical terms, but if they are sound and valid, it doesn't just mean sounds good. It means philosophically that the components within those premises are true. We come talk about warrant and all that, but anyway, forget all that. If premise 1 and premise 2 are true, the conclusion necessarily follows. You can't say, well, I don't like it. You can't say, well, I think something. It doesn't matter what you think. Thinking goes out the window. The conclusion must necessarily follow. The only way that's not true is if you can show that premise 1 or premise 2 have a flaw. And so for years, people have literally been trying to knock down premise 1 and premise 2. I've heard William Lane Craig rebut their rebuttals. But the problem is, so if I just say the argument, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Most people don't have an issue with that. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. Almost nobody has an issue with that. Now that the scientific evidence is out, which we'll get into. Therefore, the conclusion necessarily follows, which is that the universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. There's no wiggle room. Now, I know Wesley doesn't know these arguments or how they work and all that type of stuff, but that's the argument in a nutshell. It's very simple to understand. And look, this doesn't prove Christianity, but that's not the point of the argument. So I'll stop there. Adam, you can throw in.
No, that's excellent, man. And I just want to throw in a couple pieces too, because I think this is something that's going to come up in the video. And that's, it seems that, and it's not just Kevin Wesley, but a lot of people, when it comes to argumentation, they have this notion about certainty. I'm saying, as if you have to have certainty about a particular proposition in order to have knowledge. And epistemically, that's just false. I mean, by most accounts, I mean, maybe there's some extremists who would differ, but you don't have to know something or hold something with certainty in order to really say that you have knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Or if that was the case, then we would have knowledge over so little that we wouldn't be able to make sense of the human experience. I'm saying, so people don't really hold to that level of like psychological certainty, if you will, or logical certainty, if you know, for that matter, when it comes to proving a position or giving evidence for a position, I should say. Now, with that being said, you know, going back to, you know, Alex doing a breakdown of just deductive arguments in general, aside from the Kalam, you know what I'm saying, or whatever cosmological argument, just in general, deductive arguments, as he framed it, this is exactly right. And I would just kind of throw in as well that with each of those premises, you're shooting for this notion of it being more plausible than its negation, right? It's not so much that it has to be, you know, just like knocked down so certain that you have no control over your will. You must agree with it. That's not how argumentation works. You know what I'm saying? Right. What you're shooting for to have a sound argument is that the premises are more plausible than their negation, and the conclusion flows from the premises. It's really that simple, you know. And so I think that Wesley, he even says something to that effect, you know, towards the end. It's almost like, you know, unless you can prove something to the point where somebody has no choice but to believe it, then you don't have, you know, a solid argument, if you will. And that's just bad epistemology. It just really is. The other side is too, when it comes to, there are all sorts of cosmological arguments. There are various different ones. And a general feature of a cosmological argument is that they come in two stages, right? The first stage is typically aimed at demonstrating that some sort of fundamental feature of reality exists, like some first cause, or some sort of non-contingent fact or non-contingent being. We can maybe get into that later if need be. But usually the first phase demonstrates that there's some sort of fundamental fact of reality. if you will. I'll just put it that way. And that's what these 3 steps do. They prove that there is a cause. There's a cause behind the universe, right? And then it's usually in the second stage that you move on to, okay, like now once you have this fundamental aspect of reality, you know, how do we best understand what that fundamental feature of reality is, or what it is like? And that's when people start to disagree on, okay, well, you know, it's God, or it's, you know, the universe, or whatever. And then there's further argumentation that you go there, but there's usually two steps to the argument. Now, I bring that up to say is that surprisingly, there's a lot of philosophers, you know what I'm saying, even atheists, who would agree with many of these like step ones, if you will, of the cosmological argument. Like Graham Oppie, for example, he's a straight up atheist. Like, you know, certainly he debates against Christians all the time, but he debated exactly, but he wouldn't take issue with the first phase of the cosmological argument. He would take issue with the second phase, where we're kind of cashing out with the primary aspect of reality is. And so I said all that to say, just watching Kevin Wesley's video, I didn't get the sense that he was aware at all of this massive discussion and dialogue surrounding the argument that China McClain presented. Like, it seemed to me he had no just wherewithal when it comes to how to parse these things out, all the ideas and concepts that go into making sense of her argument, anything like that. He was just kind of giving you I don't know what he was doing. You know what I'm saying, but it's you can tell that. But let me put this way, I'm trying not to be long-winded, but it's like if you're watching a basketball game with Adam Coleman, it would be a lot different than watching a basketball game with Greg Popovich. You know what I'm saying, he's going to be talking about the game in a level of detail. You'd be like, dang, man, this cat really knows basketball. Whereas Adam Coleman is just a spectator. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that. When I listen to Kevin Wesley, based upon how he's commentating on the game, i.e. this argument that she's presenting, I can tell he doesn't really know. He's a spectator. He doesn't really know, you know, what he's talking about as far as the philosophical arguments she's presenting. And so anyway, I just want to kind of throw that in there.
Right. And speaking of his critique, I think it's time for us to hear some of that.
Shine, beautiful souls. So listen, a lot of people sent me this.
Okay. Oh, so I could. Oh, I didn't like it. We can't hear you. You're muted.
My bad. Yeah, I had it queued up, so I'm ready to go, Doc.
Yeah, I see that. So so do you want to play her part and then his critique, or you want to go right into his critique? What would you want to do?
Oh, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. I can. You want me to skip ahead, or?
Yeah, I mean, could you skip to the 2-minute 49-second mark?
Okay, I can try. 2-minute 49.
Actually, but you know what? I want you to play it, and then I want to make sure everybody can hear it in the chat. So just play a quick sample.
Okay.
It didn't exist in order to be able to create itself. Nature and the universe itself was just a big effect.
All right, you can stop it.
Was caused.
If everybody can hear that in the chat, put a 1 in the chat. If you can hear that, put a 1 in the chat. We really want you to hear what's going on here. If you heard that, 1. Okay.
Okay, I think we're good. Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So if you could go start at the 2-minute 49-second mark.
Okay, here it is. All right, just tell me where you want me to stop it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
You're going to see in the comments is the first error is ad hominem. That means people are going to assert onto me rather than deal with the information. So you'll see this in a lot of my other videos. They rather say things like you're a demon or you're an apostate and you never loved God, or you have personal problems against God, and that's why you have this belief, rather than deal with the actual information I'm saying. And this leads no one to your.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if I can share my screen.
Oh, do I need to take that off? Or? Oh,
I don't know. Let's see. No, people can see it. All right. So he just said a lot of what you guys are going to see in the comments is the first error is ad hominem. That means people are going to assert onto me rather than deal with the information. So you'll see this in a lot of my other videos. They rather say things like you're a demon, or you're an apostate, or you never loved God, or you have personal problems against God. And that's why you have this belief rather than deal with the actual information. Remember, he is critiquing her argument. How's the first error about him?
yeah. I thought that was kind of weird. I didn't know what. I mean, I didn't know if, and maybe there's some context there. Because he said something about he commented on the video, so I don't know if he commented on her video and Cass was coming at him like that. But I mean, there's certainly nowhere in the video where she's making an ad hominem against her. I mean, how could that even possibly be the case?
But he's saying that the first issue he has with her presentation,
right,
is people attacking him.
Yeah, that was.
He's assuming he knows the attack's coming.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. He's trying to guard his grill.
Well,
you know what I mean? Right.
There's a term for that, right? It's called poisoning the well, right? Or attempting to poison the well. Is a type of informal fallacy where adverse information about a target is preemptively presented to an audience with the intention of discrediting or ridiculing something that the target person is about to say. Poisoning the well can be a special case of argumentum ad hominem, and the term was first used with this sense by John Henry Newman in his work Apologia Pro Vita Sua. The origin of the term lies in well poisoning, an ancient wartime practice of pouring poison into sources of fresh water before an invading army to diminish the attacked army's strength. This was from Douglas and Walton, Informal Fallacies Towards the Theory of Argument of Criticism.
That's grimy.
Right. But what's funny, right? He's claiming that people are going to use an ad hominem attack on him. But what does he do?
Yep.
Right.
He does it ad hominem, albeit a different form of one, but nevertheless, it's still a ad hominem attack, because what he wants is that he doesn't want to be critiqued. He doesn't want his critique to be critiqued. So to defend himself, I'm going to tell the audience, if anybody comes at me to critique what I'm about to say, they're attacking me.
Yeah.
So that's supposed to scare off people like us,
right.
from saying anything.
And I'm like, fam, I mean, it might be the case that maybe he does run into that a lot, I guess. Maybe people do come at him sideways or whatever. But I mean, that's not us. I mean, I believe that he's factually incorrect about, I mean, if not everything he had to say, I mean, pretty close to it. And we're going to walk our way through it. But he's just wrong. You're just wrong, bro. It's nothing personal.
Right.
It's just, you don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And we're going to show that. Yeah.
The thing is, all reputable philosophers and debaters from Craig to Turek, all them down the line, on both sides, Hitchens, Harris, all of them, they would never preempt their statement with that. They would never, before their opening statement, they would never poison the well, because they're intellectually sound enough, or at least they feel their position is intellectually solid enough that they don't have to worry about that. And so he's kind of showing his cards up front, at least to us, but maybe his audience doesn't know that.
Yeah, maybe some insecurity there or something. I don't know.
I mean, he did take down his YouTube video.
Yeah, because I tried to find it and I was like, hey.
Yeah, Alex put me on. I didn't know, but as the famous battle rapper Loaded Luck said, we kept the file.
We kept the file.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's hilarious, man.
But I just found it odd that his first issue with her argument for the existence of God is that people will attack his critique of her argument for the existence of God. Like that
was weird, man. Because then he was like as he kind of went on to his next point, he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna get into the other problems with the video." But I'm like, "No, what are you talking about? Like how could there have been an ad hominem so far? You know what I mean?"
Right.
I thought that was weird. I didn't know what he was doing there.
So let's go to the 350 mark.
Okay, 350. How do I do this here? I think you have to add
idea.
Okay.
You're not getting anyone.
All right. I'll start you at 348.
Cool.
To realize that the universe was not eternal.
Okay, first you went to Einstein and said that in his calculations, he started to realize in his research, not started to think or have a theory. He started to realize it. And this is called appeal to authority. By naming Einstein is someone who is accepted as smart. And we do this a lot. Because someone may seem to have more information than us or has been accepted as doing so, we'd rather give them the authority so our brain does not have to think. But this is not good because they're not always right, family. Regardless of how smart they seem. And if you think for yourself, you'd likely not come to the same conclusion. So don't do appeal to authority. If they're wrong and you follow them because they thought it, now you're a lemming. Don't do that. Please know why you believe in stuff. Study stuff for yourself, family. All right? Don't appeal to authority.
So is this right there? Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted to share some things on this because
all right, cool. I just want to quote him.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I want people to hear him. I want people to see what he said, so there's no misunderstanding, right? So, okay, first you went to Einstein and said that in his calculations, he started to realize in his research. He started to realize in his research, and he started to think or have a theory. He started to realize it, and this is called a appeal to authority by naming Einstein. Einstein is someone who's accepted as smart. And we do this a lot because someone may seem to have more information than us or have been accepted as doing so. We rather give them the authority so our brain does not have to think, but this is not good because they're not always right, family, regardless of how smart they seem. And if you think for yourself, you will likely not come to the same conclusion. So don't do appeal to authority if they're wrong and you follow them because they thought it. Now you're a lemming. Don't do that, please. Know why you believe in stuff. Study stuff for yourself, family.
Yeah.
So,
all right. I know Alex. Well, I don't know. You want to go first on that, Alex? I was going to say a couple things too.
So go ahead, real quick. I got.
So bring the quote up again. Like bring that first part of it. The first part of it.
All right, hold on.
Because when I listened to it, I think what he said was, he started. Okay, he's like basically kind of quoting her that he started to realize in his research. And I think what he said, and not started to think or have a theory. I think what he was doing was juxtaposing realizing something versus saying that he started to think or have a theory. I think that's what he was trying to do. Like, it seems to me like his criticism is that when he hears her say something about realize, like it's almost like, okay, he's assuming that she means that XYZ is true, according to me, and Einstein realized this, and he came to believe it based upon his research that what I'm saying is true or something like that.
Semantics.
You know what I mean? It's like semantics, exactly. But really, she's not saying like, okay, well, I believe X, and even Einstein came to agree with X. Like, she's not saying that. She's simply saying that as the man was studying such and such, he came to recognize that so and so is the truth, is correct. Like this, such and such describes reality. That's all he's trying to say. He came to affirm something based upon his studies, right? Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was kind of, it's just really weird. Like, this is another one of those things where I realized, it's funny, no pun intended, where I realized that Kevin Wesley really has no idea what she's even presenting as far as the argument, because he's trying to nitpick at like this like wording and stuff like that has nothing to do with, the essential argument. Like, when I first heard her video, I immediately knew that she was giving a cosmological argument. Like, oh, that's it's probably the Kalam or some form of the cosmological argument, right? I don't think that clicked for him because he's just not familiar with it. And so therefore his only recourse is to, go at stuff like, wording and things like that. You know what I mean? With that being said, I thought it was interesting. After all that rant about Einstein and appeal to authority and so on and so forth, he says, study for yourself, family, study for yourself. And I immediately thought, like, okay, well, study what? Right? Like, okay, so she can't appeal to Einstein as a source of information, or you're going to call it an appeal to authority. So, like, what are you studying, right? Because if either you're going to study in the field of, let's say, cosmology, or physics, or whatever, to the point where you can, for yourself, see whether or not Einstein was right, or you can, look to, his research and say, okay, well, this is somebody who's credible in the field, and thus I've got a good reason to affirm it. But in either case, you're going to have to rely upon somebody who has some knowledge in the field to study up on it. But according to Kevin Wesley, that's appeal to authority. And so you can't even study it without falling victim to his critique. It's contradictory. But
it reeks of hypocrisy because he's speaking very authoritatively, throughout the video, and he's making an appeal. Don't follow that, family. Study for yourself. You're making an appeal.
And the only reason he got the video is because his audience said, "You're the authority we look to."
Right.
And he responded from that vantage point.
Right.
And he didn't say, "No, I ain't no authority. Don't ask me." He said, "Yeah, I'm gonna give you I'm gonna give you
So really, we should listen to a word he says. Number one, right? Yeah. We shouldn't take anything that he says authoritatively or to have any merit. You know what I'm saying? And then number two, there's no way that you can go about studying for yourself if you're not appealing to somebody who's in the field and has knowledge that you don't have, right? I mean, so there's no way forward based upon his rendering of what it means to appeal to authority. It's just nonsense, man. I mean, he just basically pulls the rug right from under himself. But see, again, this goes back to, and this is why I'm glad Alice brought it up about just the structure of arguments in general. Because if you've got the premises, everything that begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Evidence plays a role in supporting your premises, or at least it should. I'm saying, in order to adjudicate between whether or not a premise is more plausibly true than not, what you want to do is provide evidence or further argumentation to support the premise, right? And if you're going to provide evidence, you want to have evidence that's got some weight behind it. Obviously Einstein, somebody or whoever, who has studied in a particular field and has made certain calculations that seem to reliably reflect what we see going on in the universe and in reality. Like if that's not evidence that you can bring to bear to support a premise, then like what is? You can never bring evidence for
any himself.
Right. He's just asserting that kind of stuff.
You want me to share your screen?
I'm going to share. Let me see.
While he's looking for that, while he's looking for that, I'm just going to shout out the Urban Apologetics book with everybody agrees, because actually I made a version of the cosmological argument called the Leibnizian contingency argument in my chapter on Black atheism. So maybe I'll get a copy of this to Kevin Wesley, man.
Yeah, he definitely needs one. Make sure you sign it too. Do your screen again, Alex, because you had two screens on.
Yeah, I'm sharing the second one.
No, it's gone too for some reason. So do it again.
It's on mine. Hold on.
I don't see it now.
All right.
Hey, just while we're waiting for Alex, I mean, just to make it clear, unless we skip over it, but citing an authority is not the same thing as appealing to an authority. I'm saying in a fallacious sense. I think we need to make that clear. There you go. You see it on the screen,
right? Because this is his screen,
right?
But he doesn't read the definition. It says that this fallacy happens when we misuse an authority. Right. Misuse, not that we can't use any authority, because if that's the case, he needs to close his mouth and never speak and never do a video ever again.
Right. Yeah. If she says something like Einstein says X, Y, and Z, and that's it, therefore it's true, then and just and that was it, then that would be like an appeal to authority. But if she's saying that here is a person who's knowledgeable in the field and presents such and such perspective based upon his evidence and study, that's not appeal to authority. That's just citing a relevant source. That's all that is. You know what I'm saying? And if you can't tell the difference between citing a relevant source and appeal to authority, then I would kind of go back to what Alex said. It sounded like he was just looking up, fallacies and random terms on the internet, you know what I'm saying, and doesn't know how to use them. It's like somebody with a gun who has no training. Video. Yeah, right.
He'll post the definition, and the definition cuts him.
Right. He keeps doing every single time, man.
It's crazy.
It's like somebody with a gun that doesn't know how to use it, and they just spraying everybody. They just
I'm gonna hit somebody.
Everything target. You know what I'm saying? That's really what it's like. You know what I'm saying?
All right.
So the floor is yours, Alex.
Cool. So this is going to take a few minutes because there's a normal way I usually do this, but I was pulling out some more information. I don't know why it's not sharing the right way.
Well, you know what? While you're doing that, let me belabor the point here.
You might have put it on slide. You could put it on slideshow. Maybe is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it from this computer, and then we'll be fine.
It says here, Albert Einstein was a German-born theoretical physicist, widely acknowledged to be one of the greatest physicists of all time. Einstein is known for developing the theory of relativity, but also made important contributions to the development of the theory of quantum mechanics. Relativity and quantum mechanics are together the two pillars of modern physics. So he's the authority in this subject matter. Like he's the giant where all physicists, sit on. He's the baseline. He is the authority. So I just want to.
It's like this. Like, I'll just throw this last thing in there. Like, let's say, for example, you had a court case, right, where you're trying to solve a murder, right, and you have two witnesses. You can either talk to the guy who was an eyewitness and was in position to know exactly what happened and can reliably tell you, or you can talk to somebody who was down the street and heard about what happened from somebody who was running away from the scene and heard it from somebody else. Like if you have the option between the person who's in the right position and at the right time and place to know what was going on, then that's somebody that you want to talk to, right? So Einstein is like that prime witness right there. I'm saying, given his education, given his experience in the field, given his breadth of knowledge, he's in the right position to reliably speak about things concerning physics, right? So that's really what it means to be an authority. It's not a power issue of some sort, or something like that. It just means that somebody is in the right position to speak reliably about something. And so when you have somebody like that, then yes, that's the kind of person that you want to cite as you're providing evidence for a claim or something like that. That's not appeal to an authority. That's citing a relevant source. That's all that is. And I don't know why Kevin Wesley can't seem to get that. I don't know why that's so mysterious to this man. I don't.
Well, because he doesn't want it to be true, and that's kind of because he said something else later about Jastrow, and that's usually how I explain that it's not a head issue, it's a heart issue, and we as Christians can understand that, but there's no naturalistic framework for even understanding that concept because that's all they believe that exists. So I would say, so let me start like this. There's two options, right? Either something came from nothing or something came from someone. Now, no Christian scientists, astrophysicists, or atheistic astrophysicists would deny the logic of that statement. We just disagree. And actually, when we talk about uncaused first cause, there's agreement on that. It's just disagreement on who or what that is, which is also something Kevin Wesley missed. I want to, since y'all already were bringing it up, the actual appeal to authority, argumentum ad verecundium, like you all were saying, is insisting that a claim is true simply because. So like I think you said, Adam, if she had said, well, Einstein said it, so it must be true. If she had said it in that form, or it could be for anybody, anything, then that would be the case. But when we talk about without any other supporting evidence, this is something that Wesley is probably not familiar with, that there's a lot of other evidence. And actually, well, I'll get to Einstein in a second. So we talk about, and I'm gonna do these real quick, the second law of thermodynamics, which basically says the universe is running out of usable energy. And so you think about it like a car has a full tank of gas, the tank's getting closer to E. Well, when you had that full tank of gas, that's when you first started out. And if we're talking about the universe, the way that those that gas runs out, so to speak, or that energy runs out matters. The expanding universe is another point of explanation. And this is not all discovered by Einstein. In fact, most of this is not discovered by him. And a lot of this verified what Einstein discovered in 1915. So nothing comes from nothing. I know that's a semantically null sentence, but it was shown, or it's been shown, that time and space came into being at a specific moment in time in the distant past. That's all I'll say about that for now. The radiation afterglow. A lot of these discoveries were Nobel Prize winning discoveries when they happened in the last 150 years. So the radiation afterglow in the early universe. Sorry, I'm going from screen to screen here. So in 1965, I believe, Arnold Penzias and Robert Wilson discovered this radiation afterglow, and this laid to rest conclusively any discussion of an eternal steady state. So let me back up. Scientists, especially ones who were prone not to believe in God, affirmed and wanted to affirm the idea that the universe was eternal, because if it's eternal, and they knew, this is what's ironic, they knew that if there is a beginning, that puts problems on them. Now I have to include God at least as an option. But if I can say it's eternal, I don't have to even ask the question, let alone give an answer. So then they discovered the great galaxy seeds in the radiation afterglow, which this showed that enough matter congregated at the moment of creation to allow galaxies to form, but not so little to allow the universe to collapse back in on itself. And where I picture it is, picture God blowing up a balloon and blows it up just big enough to where it doesn't pop, but not so little that it deflates. Like that level of precision that has been shown, that if that moment was off or altered by, I forget the exact number, but it's like 1/1,000,000th of a second, we wouldn't be here. Nothing would be here. That's the level of precision. And then we can talk about Einstein's theory of general relativity. Now, without trying to be too technical, So the theory is essentially trying to explain how gravity works. Let me show like this. So he said that space-time, it stretches around a massive object, and the light traveling around or traveling through that space-time stretches too. So the massive object like the Earth causes a curvature in the way other objects and other elements in space-time react to it. And that is the force we feel as gravity. So that's why even with us, with humans or with anything, we affect it, but it's obviously not the same way that the Earth does, because we're not that size. And so this also led to, I guess, the discovery of the redshift. And what that basically means is they're able to trace back to this beginning point, because light starts out one color, and it's a slightly different color at the longer the wavelength gets, and the farther out it gets, it turns to be red. So what they can do is trace back where that light is at its brightest point, and that was what they were able to trace back to confirm the initial moment of creation. All right. Now, with regards to Einstein, there's another picture. So the guy on the right, or I don't know if it's your right or your left, his name is Arthur Eddington. And a lot of people because we know who Einstein is, but let's go back in time. Most people didn't know who he was. So Einstein's in Germany. This is 1915. What's happening in the world in 1915? There's a world war. Nobody wanted to deal with any Germans. Eddington, first of all, he was one of probably the few people on the planet that could even understand what Einstein came up with. And he was willing to cross that barrier in wartime, where there was very high skepticism of any enemy science, so to speak. So the fact that we know Einstein is because of Arthur Eddington and another guy, a Dutch guy, I forgot his name. But you got to understand their relationship, because Eddington not just popularized, but he did further research on Einstein's work to really fine tune it and to in a sense keep him honest. Because the other thing we have to remember, and I think later in the video Wesley alludes to the fact that because she brings up Jastrow, and I think we know those quotes, and she's like, well, he said Jastrow's an atheist or agnostic. And he tries to knock that down as something that doesn't matter, and it matters a lot, because we can talk about the criterion of embarrassment. But let's just talk about Eddington for a second. So he brings the work over. He starts helping Einstein clarify the work, and they're able to get this kind of more fine tuned. But let's be clear, Einstein called his own work irritating, his own theory irritating, because he knew where it was likely leading. And he was not a believer. He was not a deist or theist or Christian. And so it does matter when somebody is affirming truth that does not suit their own goals, that does not suit their own desires or presuppositions. And so what Mr. Wesley, I call him, is missing, one of the things is if we're gonna, oh wait, let me back up. Arthur Eddington was a Quaker, but he didn't seem to really affirm even his own theological points of view. So these are quotes from Arthur Eddington. He says, the beginning seems to present insuperable difficulties unless we'd agree to look on it as frankly supernatural. That's in that book, Expanding Universe. He also said, philosophically, the notion of a beginning of the present order of nature is repugnant to me. I should like to find a genuine loophole. Okay. He also says we must allow evolution in infinite time to get started. So why am I showing this? Because the criterion of embarrassment says that a type, it's a critical analysis in which an account is likely to be true as the author would have no reason to invent an account which might embarrass them. And so I'm gonna stop sharing. The fact that I give them credit, because the fact that these scientists in Eddington and Einstein were willing to subvert their own presuppositions in the name of promoting truth is actually admirable, especially in this day and age. But let's be clear. Einstein did try to kind of bury his work. There was a cosmological constant, and he tried to fudge the most brilliant mathematician in the world, y'all, tried to fudge the math, and he essentially got called out on it, and he kind of clarified things and rectified it. But what we got to understand, it really wasn't until the 30s. So this is 15 years later now, where people were also starting to catch on and affirm and cross-reference. And so Mr. Wesley is missing the other fact here, another fact. He's missing a lot. But the way that in Einstein's world, and really even in our world, as we do theological stuff, we go to seminary, go to college, whatever you do, you can't just put out stuff. You can't just say stuff. You can't just appeal to your own authority, essentially. What happens, you got to do peer-reviewed research, right? That has to be duplicatable or replicatable in a lab, usually, or at least with the math that you're putting out. In other words, this is going to have to pass the scrutiny of other people in your field repeatedly, and they're going to try to knock down those premises, and they're going to try to knock down your math. And then if it passed, now you got something legit that you could put out to the public. But Mr. Wesley seems to be thinking that no, he was just born Einstein, and therefore they always took everything he said for granted or for truth. And that's nothing to be further from the truth if you just do some basic history. Right. So he's missing the impact. And actually, this last thing I'll say, even in court, we all know hearsay is not admissible, except in one situation where the witness is incriminating themselves and or giving testimony to their own detriment, which is the criterion of embarrassment, which means historically, anthropologically, judicially, this is a valid form of criteria to justify any evidence or propositions being put forth.
Right.
So he wants to try to use this. Oh, that doesn't. No, it matters a lot. That literally the legal system makes a caveat for this. And so these weren't Christians trying to promote something. In fact, they promoted something that kind of shot them in the foot. And all of that matters. And he didn't do any of that research to know that. So,
right. I mean, Einstein, he went to the Hubble telescope. He saw it for himself, right?
I was just about to say that. Yeah,
he said his fudge factor was the greatest blunder of his whole career. So it wasn't just him in his laboratory saying, "I think this is how it works," and everybody said, "Okay, you're right." That's not what happened.
Right.
People challenged him. He didn't believe in his own authority.
No.
You know what I mean? So, but
well, let me just add this in too, because I just kind of want to draw together like why this all matters, right? Because when you're talking about the so-called Big Bang, or the standard cosmological model, the implication is that in some sense or another, the universe had a beginning. There was a point. In other words, it's not eternal in the past. I'm saying you can't go eternally into the past and you find the universe. At some point, the universe doesn't exist. I'm saying if you go far back enough, that's kind of like the idea. And so when you have a model, right? Basically, what a model is, it's basically a theory or an account of how things actually are. You're saying, okay, this such and such is the case about the universe, let's say, right? Now, here's the thing. Somebody else might come up with a different model. They might have a steady state model or an oscillating model, where this is notion of the universe expands and then it contracts and then it expands again, and it's kind of going back and forth. Or there might be, various other different models. And now when professionals are going about trying to figure out which model they believe to be, the best, or that which most accurately reflects how things actually are, one of the main things they're going to take into account is how well does this model account for the evidence and observations that they come across, right? Now, here's why it's significant. Going back to the things that Alex pointed out with the redshift, with background radiation, with the entropy. I'm saying the fact that our universe is constantly moving towards having no usable energy. Like, these are all independent observations made about the universe that all align with the standard cosmological model. In other words, if the standard cosmological model, which entails that the universe had a beginning in some sense or another, if that model is true, then we would expect to see things like the redshift, usable energy dissipating, and the things that Alex named. So I said that to say, going back to the original argument, the Kalam, that second premise is the universe began to exist. Now, we have scientific evidence. We have the standard scientific model. The standard model of cosmology implies that the second premise of the Kalam argument is more plausibly true than not. And there are a series of pieces of evidence that support that standard cosmological model, right? So when you make the claim, when you're stating that second premise, the universe began to exist, you're not making some sort of claim that's just pulled out of thin air. No, in the realm of science, I'm saying there is evidence that would point to that being the case. And so you're on good grounds to affirm that the second premise is true. Now let's just say that you didn't have all that science to support the second premise. Independent of that, there are philosophical reasons for affirming that the second premise is true. As a matter of fact, before the 20th century, you didn't have all of this scientific evidence pointing to there being a beginning to the universe. But nevertheless, centuries before then, there were sound philosophical arguments that were already in place, that would affirm that second premise. So, I mean, are we cool if we go into that now, or did you guys want to get there later? Or
well, yeah, we get there later. I want to get to the next.
Okay, cool.
Clip.
All right.
So,
does not lead you to effect every time.
If you can go to
and then saying that he realized
5 minutes 31 seconds.
All right. 5 minutes 31 seconds. So I just wanted to kind of leave that there for now. But aside from the scientific evidence, which is strong enough in and of itself, we also have philosophical evidence to support that second premise as well, which we can get into. So you said 5 minutes 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay.
Barely knew that if the universe had a beginning, it needed a cause.
It needed a cause. Wow. Now, that's called causal fallacy, to say something needed a cause. It's like to say there's no other option but this one, or false dilemma. It needed a cause. No, it didn't need a cause. It could be a catalyst. It does not need to be a cause. It could be a catalyst. We could be a catalyst instead of a creation. Do you understand? A catalyst means something happened and therefore you are, not someone thought you out. You understand? Having existence doesn't mean that you're a creation. It just does not mean that. And to assume that it must be a cause for your creation, and that's the only option that there is literally false dilemma, a false dichotomy. You created a false dichotomy. Now, and that because of that false dichotomy, you won't be able to get past that. Okay, so undo those false dichotomies and say maybe there's other reasons. Open your mind. Now watch this.
No space,
Are you
no
stopping?
time.
All right. So he just said it needed a cause. Wow. Now that's called a causal fallacy, to say something needed a cause. It's like to say there's no other option but this one, or false dilemma. It needed a cause. No, it didn't need a cause. It could be a catalyst. It does not need to be a cause. It could be a catalyst. We could be a catalyst instead of a creation. And then he puts up causal fallacy. I don't think he reads the definitions.
Bro, it's the same website it look like he keep going to. Whatever, and he don't even read it.
Because it says a causal fallacy is any logical breakdown when identifying a cause. Not that there is a cause. He's saying what she says a cause, that's a causal fallacy. No, that's not what a causal fallacy is, bro. It's a logical breakdown in identifying a cause, not the cause itself, not just having a cause, right? But it gets worse though, right? Because
unfortunately,
right, he talks about it being a false dilemma, but here's the issue, right? So let's go to Merriam-Webster. One of the definitions of a cause is an agent that brings something about, right? We're all in agreement with that, right? Mm-hmm. So he says it's not a cause, it's a catalyst. What's a catalyst, ladies and gentlemen? An agent that provokes or speeds significant change or action. That's a cause.
A catalyst.
Right. A cause is something that's an agent that causes something. A catalyst is an agent that causes something. Mm. So he's like, it doesn't have to be a cause. It could be a cause. What? So not only does he don't understand the fallacies, I'm serious. I'm not trying to be mean. He doesn't know what words mean.
He doesn't. And you know, and here's the thing about
this is just Webster's. I'm not using some Greek lexicon. This is Webster's.
Now it's funny you should bring up the Greek though, because I was about to go there if okay, that's cool. So here's what's interesting. Now this is the point of the video where I knew, and I feel like I'm being overly nice at this point, but this is the point where I knew that Kevin Wesley didn't know what he was talking about. You know what I'm saying? Because here's the thing, right? When it comes to any field, you know, I'll just stick with philosophy. When it comes to philosophy, you know what I'm saying, if you know, put it this way, there's certain jargon that all fields have. I'm saying every field has its own jargon. Right. I'm saying I feel like I've used this example before, but like if you go into a psychiatrist's office, I'm saying, and you say that I'm depressed, you probably mean something like, you know, you feel sad or whatever. But if a psychiatrist says to you, you're depressed, they mean something more formal than you know, you just feel kind of bad. I'm saying they're using the term depressed in a particular way, right? Now, likewise, when it comes to philosophy, you know, words like cause have a very specific usage, right? And what he conveyed right here is he's not aware of any of that. I'm saying he's reading into what she's saying about the cause, like this notion of it being like some sort of personal cause or whatever, right? Now, if he was familiar with the Kalam Cosmological Argument, he would know that actually, you know, when you're talking about everything that begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. That word cause, you can actually draw from the 4 different types of causes that Aristotle talked about. So, you know, so Aristotle lays out 4 different kinds of causes, right? You've got a formal cause, which is basically, you know, something is the way it is because that's just how, you know, that's the way that is of its very nature to be that way. You know, we could put it that way. Or you could talk about a material cause, which is, you know, like the material out of which something is made. So if you have a sculpture, you know what I'm saying, then the rock or whatever, that would be like your material cause. I'm saying it's the thing from the substance from which something else comes. But then you also have, you know, we might call a final cause or a teleological cause, which has to do with the purpose for which something is made. But then you also have what's called an efficient cause. An efficient cause would be like an agent, if you will, you know what I'm saying, from which, you know, something comes. So whereas, let's go back to the sculpture example, the material cause might be the rock, but then the sculptor, the person who's the artist, that would be your efficient cause, right? Now, in order to make the Kalam Cosmological Argument work, you can simply, you know, appeal to this notion of an efficient cause. You know what I'm saying? And that accounts for the kind of cause that we would need to have in place in order to make it work. But you don't necessarily have to have. That's not the only kind of way that the word cause can be rendered. You know what I'm saying? You know, that being said, I feel like what he's doing is he's kind of reading onto, you know, what she's saying rather than taking the argument as it is and then refuting it on that basis. You see what I'm saying? He's just kind of winging it at this point. You know what I'm saying? You know, that's basically
you're
what
being
he's doing.
real charitable. You're being real charitable.
Right.
But you know what?
Okay, I'll come back. I want to say something else, but yeah, go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
so I didn't see this or think this at the first time I was watching because I wanted to really hone in on the Einstein issue. But I'm pretty sure. So there's 3 you were talking about philosophy, and everyone in that vein knows. Oh, there it is. I was actually going to talk about that.
There you go. I knew you was going there, dog. I already know. But I got you.
The 3 fundamental rules, the 3 fundamental laws of logic are the law of non-contradiction, the law of the excluded middle, and the law of identity. And I didn't see it at first. I think he violated all 3 of the fundamental laws in like 10 minutes. That takes a lot of work, actually. I give him credit, you know. But he violates the law of non-contradiction, which you can go back to that. But the law of the excluded middle, so it basically says that it's not. So law of non-contradiction says it can't be A and B. Law of the excluded middle says it must be either A or B. And then the law of identity, which is really difficult to violate, to be honest with you. But it says a thing is what it is. And I mean, I know that sounds semantic, but that's why it's so basic, because it's hard to violate that. And so I think even somebody was in the chat was saying, but this is always the thing when I talk with atheists, it's frustrating. The question is, what created or where did the universe come from? Whatever or whoever created the universe cannot be composed of what the universe is composed of, because nothing can create itself. So the identity of the universe and its components cannot explain how the identity of the universe and its components came to be. You see what I'm saying? And so that's why even if you look at the prominent atheists, from Dawkins to Hitchens, they're clearly not on our side, but they do know that they have to find an external cause because it can't be internal to the system. And so this is why they posit a multiverse, but that doesn't answer the question either. That just pushes it one step farther back. And so he doesn't know the terminology. He doesn't understand that he literally in one swoop violated every law of logic at one time.
I mean,
and that's the key.
Again,
that's what I wanted to get to. And I'm not going to harp on it because I feel like you touched on it. Can you bring that back though, right quick?
Sure.
Just kind of use the example. So the law of non-contradiction, basically contradictory propositions cannot both be true at the same time, right? So just an example, the universe has a cause. Let's just take that as one proposition. And then example B, the universe did not have a cause, right? Or doesn't have a cause, I should say, right? Like both of those propositions can't be both true in the same way at the same time, or else it violates the law of non-contradiction. Now, I said that to say, when he starts talking about a false dichotomy, what he doesn't realize is that in really good deductive arguments, right? Let me just back up for a second. In a good deductive argument, then you want to be so logically sound that if you trace your argument all the way down to the application of the laws of logic, you're still on good standing, if you will. In other words, in whether it be in the premises or in the conclusion that follows from your premises, the laws of logic ought to be at play and consistent with the premises and the soundness of your argument. And so what he doesn't understand is he can't tell the difference between the application of the laws of logic and the false dichotomy fallacy. You know what I'm saying? That's literally the mistake that he's making. Right. He literally cannot identify the fundamental laws of logic when he hears them. He mistook it for a false dichotomy. Again, I know I'm not trying to sound too heady about it, but again, this just shows how off this man is. Like he really doesn't know what he's talking about, man. Again, it's like I gave the example earlier about somebody who having a gun and just waving around, just hitting everything and not, just having no aim. That's like he's literally waving around bad logic and clipping the laws of logic as he goes. You know what I'm saying? Like that's literally what he's doing. So,
but he's assuming that he does know the laws of logic, that he's teaching us.
Right. He's talking about be logical and so on and so forth. Like, and so again, he's critiquing her and he's just dead wrong, fam. You know what I'm saying? Like nothing she said implied a false dichotomy. She said that, the universe, it had to have a cause or however she framed it. That doesn't imply a false dichotomy. It's just simply an application of the laws of logic. That's literally all it is. And so if you can't pick up on that, like I can't stress how unreliable this man is as a source when it comes to talk about philosophy, bro. This is crazy.
I mean, you cannot address anything, whether it's a worldview or an argument, if you yourself do not know the definition of the words you are using.
Right. He doesn't know, man.
It's really that bad. You can't wax philosophical if you don't know the definition of the words that you're trying to make an attempt to use. It really stops there.
Yep.
Like we can't go further into considering your argument because you can't formulate an argument because you don't know words.
And here's the thing, though, bro. I agree. Now, here's the thing: if we were just having a conversation with somebody, right, and they didn't know, all this stuff, I mean, fine. I mean, it's not like common knowledge necessarily. But if you don't know, you're just having a conversation, fine. Right. But when you try to sun somebody, right, and you're being like implicitly condescending at the same time and talking about these believers are going to do this, ad hominem, blah, blah, blah. When you're going to take that tone and be dead wrong about literally everything that's coming out your mouth, and you can't clearly identify basic philosophical concepts as you're being condescending towards other people, bruh.
And it gets worse.
You can't do that.
It actually gets worse.
Man, I know.
It gets worse. So, Adam, if you can go to the 6 minute 40 second mark.
6 minute 40 second. All right.
Yeah, 40. 6 minute 40.
I got you at 6:37.
Okay.
Closest I can get. All right, here we go.
End up at the same places, family. That's pretty much it. So time is still not a thing that exists, okay? Moments do.
All right, stop there. I want you to play that part again. I want everybody to look at his face when he says this.
I can't do it, bro. Bro, I'm losing my mind over here, man. I can't do it, bro. I want you
to look at his face one more time when he says
this. My gosh, bro.
Play it again.
Oh man, 640. Okay.
Watch his face. Watch his expression.
So time is still not a thing that exists, okay? moments do.
Okay, stop it.
Oh my God, bro.
Now, there are people who study facial recognition to see when people are lying or not. And there's this term called duping the light. And the term means that when people actually try to pull a fast one on you, they will smile. They'll do a quick smile because they think they got over on you. Did you see the smirk when he said this?
Interesting.
So, and what he said was, right? So time is still not a thing that exists. Only moments do. He thought he was sexy when he said that. He thought he was so sexy and poetic.
Man, I've been trying to hold it together. You bringing it out of me, man. But go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
So again, we go to Webster's definition of a moment: a minute, portion, or point of time, an instant, a comparatively brief period of time, a present time, a time of excellence or conspicuousness.
So, in other words, you can't talk about the word moment without time existing.
Basically, yeah.
It's worse. It's actually worse than that because he said moments plural. He said time doesn't exist. Moments do plural. Now let's talk about time a little bit. All right. Now, if you have more than one moment, then the question can be asked: which moment was earlier or later than the other?
Right.
Now, once you have a relation between two moments of earlier, later then you have tense, like past or present tense, future tense, or what have you, which are indications of time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So if you're saying that moments plural exists, you can't make that statement without you can't coherently make that statement anyway without conceding that time exists, because you can't have moments plural without time. And once you start having more than one moment, you can talk about duration, you can talk about tense, you can talk about sequence. You know what I'm saying? In terms of, which order they come in. All of those things are indicative of time. Now, the two main theories of time are going to be your A theory of time or your B theory of time. A theory is kind of like our common sense notion of time. B theory of time would be something like there's no, time is static, but nevertheless, time still exists, right? So, and likewise, when it comes to, we're talking about physics, when we're talking about the beginning of the universe, like physicists account for time all the time, you know what I'm saying, in their equations and stuff like that. Like the concept of time is useful as they're doing their equations to describe what's going on in the physical world. So in so much that this concept of time has some applicability, that gives us a good reason to note that time probably does exist. You know what I'm saying? That's really what it comes down to. So this claim of time doesn't exist, I can't tell you how bold of a claim that is. Like on what basis is he saying that?
And when did he say it?
Yeah, exactly. When did he say it? Exactly.
So the whole part of it, back to Einstein, it wasn't just about the creation of the universe and the gravity, but it was his understanding of space-time. And one of the things that came out of that was that he said, not just him, but a lot of them, all of them actually have said, you cannot talk about space outside of time. You can't talk about those two divorced from each other. Right. In fact, if we go back to the beginning, part of the reason that they are also confirmed outside of the fact that you can't have a state of infinite regression, and this is the other reason he's bogus. If there was no beginning, if there was no universal beginning or no primary cause, we would never arrive at today, because there was no time to exist and to get to the next day, to get to this moment in the first place. And if there is no beginning, then we're always in yesterday and today never arrives. But that's clearly not the case, because yesterday I was doing something else and right now I'm here. So even in his own speech, and there's no way to get away from this, he said, people sent me this video. When? When did they do that? He said, you haven't shown, he's talking about the girl, you haven't shown this. So there's a past tense here. Like you can't even get away from it in your speech. And so the other thing about, I was trying to look up, is there any serious physicist or anybody that has said this type of stuff? And I found this one guy, Carlo Rovelli. He's an Italian theoretical physicist. Now, I don't know much about him. I don't know how serious he is or not, but this is in his own words, and this is not capping for anybody. It said, when he came to this realization or this thought about time, it says, and then there was the LSD. He took it a few times, and it turned out to be the seed of his interest in physics generally and in the question of time specifically. Right. He said, quote, "It was an extraordinarily strong experience that touched me also intellectually." He remembers, among the strange phenomena was the sense that time stopped. Bro, I don't know what happens when you take LSD because I ain't never done it. But
it's pretty bad, apparently.
You know what I'm saying? I can understand how he arrived at that conclusion, or at least the idea that this might be reality. But that's not how we want to do our research, I don't think. And no. I could not find any other well-noted, I don't care Christian worldview or not, scientists, physicists, anything that would affirm that idea that time does not exist at all. So when we're talking about the universe, we're also talking about space, time, and matter coming into being at a specific moment in time. And she talks about the cause effect thing. Whatever caused space, time, and matter must be space, timeless, and immaterial. That's logic. That's not a false dichotomy. That's not a, what do you say, causal fallacy. That's not any of that.
Right, man. It's a shame, man. I mean, and so time is a well, I mean, there's volumes upon volumes written upon this. I mean, I can't give you the whole expanse of all of it, right now. But to make the claim that time doesn't exist and then just assert that, which I think is interesting, because he got on, China McClain for citing Einstein, at least giving some support for what she was saying. He just boldly claimed that time doesn't exist and didn't give anything to back it up. Just like, it doesn't exist. Moments do. I mean, it's just silly, man. It's just silly. But it goes to show that, to be honest, I'm just like lay my cards out. When I first started doing apologetics, I honestly wasn't sure how much these guys know or they don't know, because sometimes, not necessarily Kevin Wesley, but I'm thinking some other folks who they can have a really good recall in terms of stuff that they read and be able to regurgitate it. But it's videos like these that help me to see, like, you know what? Nah, we're really dealing with like a Wizard of Oz type of situation. You're saying, like, when you pull the curtain back, these cats, man, they bruh, they don't know what they're talking about, dog. I'm sorry.
And the hits keep on coming, actually, Adam.
They keep on coming. Greatest hits.
If you can go to the 7-minute, actually just the 7-minute mark. You can start on the 7. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we can literally look at the sequence of our own thoughts and get a sense of time. Like, we didn't even need anything external to do.
But according to him, we don't have time. We just have watches.
Yeah, we track the sun.
You see that?
Right.
Your third eye got to be open to catch that thing.
Right. Now the question is, like, what are those watches? I'm not even going to go there.
And when were they made?
When were they made? What are they keeping track of, metrically speaking? Like, anyway.
If she could prove that, then we could all accept that. And if she could do it, she'd be the first one to ever prove that. Because guess what? We can't even establish that there's never been nothingness. That there's ever been nothingness, forgive me. We don't know what nothing is. This is just a concept. Nothing is a concept. We don't know what nothing is.
Stop.
You understand? So the idea that there was nothing,
nothing is just a concept. Nothing is a concept. We don't know what nothing is. You understand? So that the idea that there was nothing, this is where you guys land on. There must be a God. Because if there was nothing, how do you get something from nothing? What if there never was nothing? Back to Webster's. Nothing. Not anything. No thing. No part. So we have a word to explain what it is. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand. Like, again, words are made to describe things. Right. I'm not tripping, right? Like, this is right. So he says we don't know what nothing is. But here we are, though.
Aristotle said it's what rocks dream about.
There you go.
Right. There you go. Hey, go back to that previous slide right quick to his quote.
The first one or the second one?
I think it was the second one. We talks about. Okay. Yeah. No, this one right here. It says you understand. So the idea that there was nothing. This is where you guys land on it. There must be a God, because if there was nothing, how do you get something from nothing? What if there never was nothing? Now, here's the thing. If we don't know, if we're just oblivious to what nothing is, right, then how would he even be able to make sense of and understand what it is that Christians or believers are trying to articulate if he doesn't know what nothing is? You know what I'm saying? Like if he doesn't, like, clearly he understands what follows from this notion that something can't come from nothing. So he must know enough about nothing, you know what I'm saying, to even be able to discern what it is that with the argument that Christians are making, or that believers in God are making. So this claim that we don't know what nothing is, of course we do. It's referring to a state of absolute negation. That's what it means.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? This is not mysterious like whatsoever. Now here's what's interesting though, and this does get to the point of the argument, is that if you have a state of nothingness, I'm saying a state of absolute negation, right? That means that there is no thing in such a state that has any capacities or powers to bring about an effect, right? So if there's a state of nothingness, by definition, that state of nothingness would not be able to bring about an effect like the universe, because it doesn't have any capacities, powers, I'll just leave it at that, by which it can bring a universe, into being. So it doesn't make sense. It's an incoherent notion to say that the universe somehow popped into being out of nothing. So yes, therefore you do have to have something then to account for how the universe came to be. And that's where, we're going to enter God into the equation. And there's arguments for that. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, people know where the argument leads.
Well, I mean,
besides
his proposition being a double negative, right? Mm-hmm. There never was nothing. If the proposition is correct, right? Forget the grammar, right? There was never was no thing. If I propose that God is a thing, then he exists. Because you're proposing that there never was nothing. That means there was always something.
Right.
And if I can think and compose of God as a thing, then my God exists. Because according to you, to your proposition, there was always something.
And
right.
that's kind of a weird way of Anselm's armor. I think you came up with some, BK. That's like another way to do Anselm's ontological argument in a different way.
Oh no, but now say what's interesting is that this sounds similar to. Matter of fact, I got it right here. Shoot, that's crazy.
You got to coin that one, BK.
Shout out to Josh Rasmussen. You know what I'm saying? He's got a book called How Reason Can Lead to God, and it's kind of it's a version of the contingency argument that I mentioned earlier. You know what I'm saying? This is what I use in the Urban Apologetics book as well, in chapter 11 in Black Atheism. But this idea, he says something to the effect of, we don't know that there's never been nothingness or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that actually is kind of like the crux of Leibniz's argument. How is it that there's something rather than nothing? Right. You know what I'm saying? And the idea is that there has to have been something, or else you can have all these other somethings later on down the road. You know what I'm saying? But he actually kind of backed into the contingency argument, if you will, as he was chuckling and making an argument against the Kalam. So I think it's pretty interesting. And
we don't have probably time to get into all of it. I mean, we're trying to stick close to Einstein and the cosmological, but you do have to at least know of, or at least take into consideration. I know he probably can't, but it's not just that there's something rather than nothing. There's something that's extremely orderly. And if there was something to come into existence out of nothing, ex nihilo, then it would be most likely disorderly. And that's from every level. I remember when I was talking with Hugh Ross, it's not just that the teleological argument works at the macro universal galaxy level. It works at every substrata of those levels, on down to the beings and on down to the cells within our being. So at that point, you're positing a mind. You're not just positing a spaceless, timeless, immaterial being. And so, like, we're building this case. So eventually, not tonight, but you've built the case to where it's spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, intelligent, personal. Well, that sounds like Yahweh. And so he may not understand. I keep saying, man, I'm being too nice now. He doesn't understand that the Kalam argument is like step one. In fact, it's
the first phase. That's right.
Yeah, and then usually, especially with youth or whoever, if I'm giving a scientific talk, we do a talk called "Is God Real?" Like step one is the surge thing I showed you. That's the first 10 minutes. The rest of the 50 minutes, I'm gonna get you to the rest of that list. But that first, to be honest, it's much easier to prove God exists than to prove Christianity is true. In other words, this argument, this is a pretty solid argument, regardless of worldview. That's why most people may even go to deism or being agnostic, because they're like, you know what? It makes more sense that there is a being, an ontological being outside of the known world, known universe. That makes more sense. Like I said, something comes from nothing or something comes from someone. Which one makes more sense? I asked a 7-year-old. Just tell me which one makes more logical sense. So we haven't cracked the scripture yet. That's why I say it's easier to prove God exists, and this is one of the easiest ways to do it. And the fact that he can't grasp the easiest way, we can't even go to nothing deeper.
Right. So, no, we can't, man. Yeah, it's like I mean, to your point, and I just kind of want to emphasize this: it's not just Christians who, believe that the Kalam or any first phase of the cosmological argument is something to be wrestled with. I mean, like again, I mentioned Graham Oppie earlier. He would concede some form of the first phase of a cosmological argument, and then he would say that the initial state of the universe, is the fundamental part of reality. Now, I think he's wrong, but I just wanted to make the point that again, there are those two phases. You have the initial phase of the cosmological argument where you're establishing there's some sort of fundamental entity in the universe, and then you also have that second phase where you're dealing with some analysis of what that fundamental aspect of reality is like. Now, Alex, you raised a really good point that when we're talking about we're not just talking about any old effect. We're talking about a specific one, i.e., the universe, right? And this particular universe is indeed, and I don't want to jump too far ahead because he says something about this later, but it is indeed fine-tuned, and you don't have to be a Christian to believe that. Like you could be a straight-up atheist and note that when it comes to the equations, there you go. When it comes to the equations that describe what the physical reality is like, you can look in those equations and see how finely tuned this universe really is. And so we're talking about a cause that could bring about such a finely tuned universe. Yeah, that is indicative that you're dealing with some sort of mind on an unfathomable level that can bring such a finely tuned effect about, rather than just chaos, right?
Finding truth would like to know, how is the word proof being used here?
Oh, good. That's very good.
Wait,
so here's
by
the thing.
us or by Kevin Wesley?
That's a good question.
Well, now here's the thing. I'm glad he mentioned that, because Kevin Wesley will often say things like prove it or proof. He kind of throws that word proof around kind of willy-nilly. Mm-hmm. And again, that's another indicator that you're dealing with somebody who hasn't really spent a lot of time, in dealing with philosophy, or kind of levels of critical thinking. Because the reality is, if we're going to be just strict about it, I mean, there's very few things that you can prove other than like certain mathematical truths or logical truths. Like other than that, typically you don't find philosophers or people in any given field who know what they're doing using words like proof, if you will. They'll say things like you can give evidence, or there are arguments that will provide some sort of justification to affirm some proposition or an argument or what have you. That's typically what you're gonna find. But this idea of there being proof, as in some sort of fact or argument that conveys some level of certainty for which you cannot in any way, be anything other than overpowered and forced to believe X, Y, and Z, that's just not a feature of real discourse and critical thinking. I'm saying that's just not how this works. What we want to do is we want to say, given our infallibility, right? What we can do is say, hey, you know what? We're infallible. We are not infallible. Fallible. That's infallible. Given our fallibility, I'm saying we say, hey, you know what? I may not be able to reach some sort of like logical, and I'm using logical in a very strict sense, logical certainty about such and such, but I do have evidence or argumentation such that I can rationally affirm X, Y, Z to be true. Right. And that's really all you need to hold a position, rationally. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, it goes back to Occam's razor, and I would say, to answer his question, I'm using it, at least I think we all are, in the philosophical sense, and even at the beginning.
Right, we are, right, yeah.
Right. And I don't know at what point he jumped on it. Like, I laid out what a deductive argument is and how the conclusion necessarily follows. That is not my rules, obviously. That's just how it works. And at some point, you have to say, we should say, based on Occam's razor, more of the evidence points to A as opposed to B. Therefore, I'm going with A. And to me, when I lay out all the evidence, more of it points to a theistic universe than to an atheistic or naturalistic universe. Therefore, I'm going with this. That's the level of proof is never going to be 100%, but I don't need 100%. Here's the other thing I find really disingenuous, not with the comment in the box, but with Wesley and other people. The only time people like him or most people demand 100% certainty and proof is when it comes to God. So when it comes to a maximally great being who creates everything, or at least that's the proposition, now you got to know every single detail about every single thing about him and every single thing he did and how he did it. Otherwise, you won't believe at all. And I've asked people, I was like, so have you ever flown in an airplane? Do you know every single detail about how a plane works? Well, but you get on that plane with a bunch of other people and you don't know the weight limit of that plane and you know how the buttons work and you trust that pilot. You fall asleep and you trust that pilot to get you where you're going and you don't think twice about it, but you don't have 100% certainty about how it works. Like, and that's just an easy example. We do this all the time. All of us do this. But when it comes to this, now you're going to raise the stakes about what counts as proof or what counts as evidence to such an absurd level that nothing and no one could ever meet that standard. And that's disingenuous to me. That's intellectually dishonest. And that's why even the most prominent atheists won't do that, at least the intellectually sound ones.
Adam, can you go to the 8-minute mark, please?
This is where you guys land on it. There must be a God, because if there was nothing, how do you get something from nothing? What if there never...
You said 8-minute mark, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What are we left with? Did we go over it all? I mean, you could have been shat out. You could be pixie dust. You could, and whatever creator this could have moved on about his business. This could be a video game. This could all be an illusion. We could all just be in some type of video game.
Stop it.
So it does not
all right. So are we left with this appeal to ignorance because we don't know what we are left with? What we are left with, do we go over it all? I mean, could you have been shot out? You could be pixie dust. You could, and whatever created this could have moved on about his business. This could be a video game. This could be an illusion, all just be in some type of video game. What I would like to showcase is his hypocrisy right off the bat. Because earlier in his critique, when she said that there is a cause, he said, no, that's fallacious. You can't, it doesn't have to be a cause, right? But here we are, few minutes later, he's giving causes. It could be pixie dust. It could be a video game. It could be illusion. So according to your definition of causal fallacy, this is fallacious as well. Be consistent. That's my
yeah, that's not a strong suit, but you know, but here's what's crazy about it though. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, it just keeps getting worse and worse. But he's just piling on, you know, more and more. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I'd have to play the tape back. But I think by this point in the video, well, he's already played the whole video at this point, and he's kind of recapping. So she makes a statement about how, you know, whatever the cause of the universe would have to be, but it had to be timeless, spaceless, you know, immaterial, and enormously powerful. And I think she adds in like intelligent or something like that. Now, here's the thing: it is true that when it comes to something that's timeless, spaceless, and immaterial, it is true that if you survey the literature of philosophy that's out there and people who have wrestled with these things, there are only really two categories of things that at least conceptually speaking, would fall into something, the category of existing in an immaterial, spaceless, timeless sort of a way. And that would be what's called abstract objects, like numbers, sets, you know, relations, you know, things like that. You know, so you have abstract objects, and then you have like an unembodied mind. Now, abstract objects, just by definition, there was called causally effete. They can't affect change. They can't, like, I can't throw a number 7 at you and hit you in the eye with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it just doesn't work that way. You know, it's something that it can't stand in causal relation to other things. But an unembodied mind is what you would call like a concrete object. It's something that can have a causal effect on some other things and stuff like that. So between the two options, if all you have are two options between in terms of what's timeless, spaceless, and immaterial, if all you have is either abstract objects that can't cause anything, and therefore that's off the table in terms of what could cause the universe because they can't cause anything, then you are left with an unembodied mind, right? That's enormously powerful. Again, time and space is immaterial, intelligent enough to create a precise effect and all those kind of things. So actually, she said it in like China said it in like a shorthand kind of a way, but she's actually correct though. I mean, that is true, that you are left with a being in the way that she described. I think she goes on to talk about how that just fits the description of a god. Mm-hmm. Now, if Kevin Wesley were familiar with the argument, then he would know that's where she was going with it, and then maybe you could attack the actual argument. But it's clear he's obviously not aware, that of the argument that she's presenting, and so he's just kind of grasping the straws, trying to make something out of nothing. Pun intended.
Right. Alex, you want to chime in real quick, or you want to go to the next clip?
We can go.
All right, cool. All right, Adam, if you can go to the 8-minute 30-second mark.
Must mean that this right here.
Oh, actually, I want to play a little bit of this because there's something I wanted to say about it right quick.
Sure.
All right.
What are we left with?
What are we left with? Again, appeal to ignorance. And then she goes.
Extremely powerful, extremely intelligent, precise, given the precision that our universe was created with.
We don't know.
Okay, my fault. So again, let me just say this, and I'll back up to the 8:30 mark. But what I wanted to get at is he's kind of laughing about the "what are we left with" part, and he refers to it as an appeal to ignorance. And he's sort of like, oh, well, we don't know what it is, therefore God, that sort of a thing. What I mean? Right. But the reality is, actually, again, this is another one of those instances similar to where he mistook, an application of the laws of logic for being a false dichotomy. Mm-hmm. He's mistaking inference to the best explanation to be an appeal to ignorance. I'm saying really what she's saying is that, hey, of all the different explanations that we have on the table, there's one particular explanation that has more explanatory power and scope than the others, and therefore should be preferred over other explanations. That's how that works.
He's trying to make it about semantics, and he's
right. And it's a swing and a miss. So again, he's calling out these different fallacies. It sounds real cute, but bruh, you clearly don't understand them, and you can't even apply them rightly because you don't know the argument that you're contending against.
You might not want to make so much fun of the appeal to ignorance.
Right.
Extremely intelligent, precise, given the precision that our universe was created with.
We don't know that it's precise. We of course we love the world we live in, family. We're gonna make the best of it, but things die, things murder. We all have to eat stuff to survive. How precise is that? You understand? Our bodies die. We have to die. So again, maybe if we were 1 degree to the left, we wouldn't have to die. Just for instance, if you're saying something that's precise, by what are you measuring it against? What other places have you been to say that they're not precise? So again, of course, we have life, and that's beautiful. I don't want the universe to explode on me, but at the same time, we can't say it's precise because it works. You understand?
Right, stop there.
This dude, man. Oh,
so he says we don't know that it's precise. We love the world we live, family. We're going to make the best of it. But things die. Things murder, and we have to eat stuff to survive. How precise is that? You understand our bodies die. We have to die. So again, maybe if we were 1 degree to the left, we wouldn't have to die. Just for instance, if you're saying something that's precise, by what are you measuring it against? What other places have you been to say that they're not precise? So again, of course, if we have life, and that's beautiful, and I don't want the universe to explode on me, but at the same time, we can't say it's precise because it works.
Okay. I'm stuttering because it's so illogical and there's so many wrong statements. But let me just say this. Every atheistic sciences, even the most vociferous ones, Paul Davies I mentioned before, they will almost to a fault. And tell me if I'm wrong, MBK, if you can think of somebody who hasn't said something to this effect that's really wrestling with these things, that the teleological argument, the precision of the universe argument, is by far the hardest one for them to overcome. They almost all say that.
They got to contend with it,
Yeah, they'll find ways around the moral argument. I mean, they'll try to find ways around the other one, even around the Kalam argument. but they almost all talk about the teleological argument, the level of precision in this universe that has been observed, studied, and written about is by far the most difficult thing to explain away if we don't include God in the theory. And part of it is there's over 300 constants, probably that grow every day, as Hugh Ross was saying, in the universe. Forget humanity for a second, but just in the universe, that not just that, okay, well, what if number 255 wasn't there? It's not that they're all there. They have to all be there in unison from the beginning together.
Right. That
is the thing that no one can get around. And so it's not like we can take out these 10 and say, yeah, oxygen level at the anthropic principle, all these different things. And the anthropic principle is only a part of the teleological argument. Right. So even the 23 and a half axial tilt of the Earth, go on and on. The
cosmological constant that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. That Jupiter's orbit acts as kind of like a cosmic shield for Earth,
like a vacuum. Yeah,
like a vacuum. So those are just like, we can go on and on about those. But the one thing that I wanted to say about his mischaracterization is he doesn't know what he doesn't know. So, right. Like I said, scientists do, and let's back up. Science does not say anything. Scientists do. Mm-hmm. So that's why somebody like Hugh Ross and Paul Davies can look at the same evidence and arrive at different conclusions, even though, at least on Davies' side, he's wrestling with his conclusion in light of the evidence because it is that strong. So there's other components that he's not taking into consideration. And granted, that was not the focus of this video that she made. Right. That's one of my favorite ones right there. BK. I think it's 37 zeros. One time I counted it. 0.00001%. The sun would not exist. Neither would we. Like, we can call it an accident. And this is part of the reason that Stephen Hawking to his dying day was trying to use gravity as that source, that beginning. And he was never able to finalize that study or research. Because you can't, because as Adam said, impersonal physical forces do not make choices. So if you're going to say that the mathematical properties and the laws of logic and gravity, okay, if those things pre-existed the universe, then they would just be still the only things that exist in the universe. They cannot create. Right. So it's not that she's jumping to some illogical conclusion or that we are. We're saying based on that, Hugh Ross came to faith. In other words, he started to look for God by studying astrophysics in college. He was an atheist. Fazal Rana was an atheist, and by studying biochemistry came to faith. You see what I'm saying? Just because I'm That's what I got. That's right, Jonathan.
Pritchard for the win.
Hey, BK, can you go back to his quote again? That last quote he had. I want to say something about that.
This one or the other one?
I'm talking about Kevin Wesley, the quote about the precise and all that kind of stuff. I want to say something about that very quick.
Hold on,
because it's hilarious to me, man. It's hilarious to me. Okay, all right. So he said, "How precise is that? You understand? Our bodies die. We have to die. So again, maybe if we were 1 degree to the left, well, let me just start with that. When our bodies die. Now here's the distinction. Like if my body dies, then it decomposes into, lower forms of matter, if you will. Now, those cells and just say down to the electrons or whatever can actually be reused, and the energy thereof in constituting some other being, like a living organism or something like that. I'm saying it didn't just go away, right? And so the fact that we live in a universe in which that's possible is actually indicative of how precise things are ordered in the universe, because we could easily live in a universe where there was no usable energy, nor the gravitational forces would be in such a place where chemistry could occur such that our bodies could decompose.
Because Webster's been beating the brakes off this dude.
Yeah, Webster's getting busy.
That's all we need.
The definition of precise is exactly or sharply defined or stated, exact, strictly conforming to a pattern, standard, or convention.
Right.
Which is what you just said, Adam.
Of course. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it takes precision for that to be the case. Like, I need people to understand, like this universe is so finely tuned that if it were off just by a bit, and any number of these different constants that Al was talking about, chemistry, such as like the chemistry required for a body to decompose, chemistry would not be possible.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, to understand that, here's another thing. He says something like, bring that. I just one more time. I need you to bring that quote back one more time. I need to slice this up right quick. Because I'm just saying, just in this one statement, it's just so ridiculous, dog. You know what I'm saying? He says, what was he said? Oh yeah, he said, if we were 1 degree to the left, maybe we wouldn't have to die. Actually, it's hilarious because this actually describes the fine-tuned argument to a T. But anyway, for instance, if you're saying something that's precise, by what are you measuring it against? What other places have you been to say that they're not precise? So again, of course, he starts kind of rambling on.
Is it measuring a standard?
Well, it has to be. But what's funny about it is he asked the question, like, what are you measuring against? Now, if he knew what he was talking about, then he would know, shout out to Luke Barnes, he would know that when it comes to the fine-tuning argument, what physicists do, people whose job it is to kind of figure this stuff out, they can actually look at the mathematics, right? Let's just talk about gravity. Let's just talk about that for a second. We can map out or we can use numbers and equations to describe how the gravitational force behaves, right? We can do that. We can map it out mathematically and understand it. Same thing would go for any of the other forces of nature, so on and so forth, right? We can do that. Now, what physicists can do, they can sit down to those equations and see how it's functioning in the physical reality, if you will, and they can alter those equations in terms of how it interacts with this or how it interacts with that, and say, okay, well, if the universe were this way, here's how gravitation will work in a universe like this. Or here's how the electromagnetic force would work in a universe like that. They can do that. They're just using math. They can see how the forces of nature would behave in various different kinds of universes. So in terms of what we're measuring it against, how these forces can behave, if you will, just to use a simplistic example, in other universes. And we can see that, man, you know what? If this gravitational pull was off just a little bit, in this universe, like right here, then nothing would exist. Either the universe would collapse in on itself or it would expand so far out that nothing could ever, nothing meaningful could happen. Certainly can, in terms of being life-giving and so forth. So in terms of what we're measuring it against or where we've been to where we can tell, bro, like there are people who spend their whole lives mapping this out mathematically. This is not a mystery. I'm saying we can make real predictions about how this physical universe behaves and how it would be different and turn out differently if it behaved in some other way. We can do that. And from doing that, we can make comparisons and say, you know what, actually, the universe that we're currently in is really fine-tuned. That's literally what the fine-tuned argument is about, fam.
Right.
This dude clearly doesn't know what he's talking about.
And is he imagining, like, what if we lived on Mars? Or the irony is they're trying to do that, and they know we can't do it currently. Humans will not survive there or on Mercury or on Venus. So we do know that based on the study. So it's not about where else have you lived. You can't live anywhere else. That's the point.
that's the whole point. Exactly. That's the whole point.
So, and the other thing I would say is this. It's a relatively recent thing, to be honest with you, that scientists of magnitude don't start off as theists or Christians for that matter. And I have a list of scientists, and actually all the scientists who give us the framework for most of the things that we know and do on a day-to-day basis that precede Einstein and all these other people, they entered into their field or their profession based on expecting the laws of nature to conform all the time, every day, the same way. And the reason they expected that, by their own admission, is because they believed God was holding these things in. They didn't know what a constant was, but they went into their field because they believed in a God who was the same yesterday, today, and forever. So I'm gonna give you a few. Like Robert Boyle said, a deeper understanding of science was a higher glorification of God. Gave us Boyle's law, discovered the first gas. Antoine
Newton.
Antoine Lavoisier was a believer in the authenticity of the scriptures. Discovered that water was a compound of hydrogen and oxygen. Right, he was the one. John Clark Maxwell, evangelical Protestant. His kinetic theory established the temperature that temperature is entirely dependent on the speed of particles. He unified the forces of electricity and magnetism. Like these
Francis
are
Bacon. Francis Bacon, right?
Francis Bacon, Lemaitre. You mentioned Newton, the universal law of gravitation, and his laws of motion. Interesting about Newton. You talk about a pandemic. This dude got sent home from school because of the Black Plague, and invented calculus while he was home. So
that's tough.
Make the most of your time, y'all.
Yeah.
George Washington Carver.
I've been playing Madden.
George Washington Carver, he, famous African American at that, Protestant evangelist, and we know what he did. Francis Collins, currently today, he is the president of NIH, the National Institute of Health, arguably the most famous scientist in the country. He mapped the human genome. Blaise Pascal developed Pascal's triangle, and he was a prominent theologian as well. So, like, I'm just going to stop there. Samuel Morse,
John Polkinghorne.
John Polkinghorne, excuse me. What Wesley doesn't know, and what a lot of people may not know, is that there was never really, it's a relatively recent thing, I'll say, that there's this conflict between, or perceived conflict between science and Christian faith. That's not really true, and it was not historically true. They want to use like Galileo. No, you're blowing that, and you don't really understand it. Yeah. It wasn't that he was against science. He was against God. It was just that's Catholic Church. We got to talk about that later. But the reality is most people went into, or they knew they could go into physics and biochemistry and chemistry because they knew, even without a telescope or microscope, that these things were specifically ordered, and they always operated the same way every day. So
just to kind of make sense of that, I mean, just add a little bow on it, but the idea is that if you have a worldview that anticipates or would predict an orderly world, then your worldview is conducive to you engaging in that world to be able to make discoveries and things like that, because you're expecting regularity in nature. Yeah. If you have a worldview that expects chaos in the world or something like that and doesn't account for regularity, then that worldview is not going to be a good stepping stone for you as you venture into the sciences and try to look for regularity. So to your point, that's why like a Newton, Kepler, Francis Bacon, and so forth, that's why they can get into, science as theists, because their worldview is compatible with the kind of regularity that they expected in nature, which is necessary for them to do their scientific work. So he's just, anyway, I can say more about that, but I guess we'll have to go into the other clip.
One more. Did you talk about William Harvey? Did you mention William Harvey, Alex?
Me? No, I don't think I did, but throw him in there too.
Yeah, he's the first to fully describe the circulatory system, including valves, veins, and the role of the heart. And this is a quote from him. Life, therefore, resides in the blood, as we are informed in our sacred writings. So he was inspired by what the Bible says. Well, if the Bible says the blood is sacred, there must be something to this blood. And that's what got him to have all these discoveries.
Right.
So, I mean, it is what it is. But let's go to we're gonna go to the 9-minute 40-second mark, Mr. Coleman.
Yes, sir.
Personal entity.
All right. Got you at 9:38.
There's only one God. Now, hang on. How do you determine that? So, okay, there was nothing. Let's just say you're right. There was nothing, and a God created this universe. But what tells you there's only one? Who told you that? Why do you think there can only be one? Look, do you understand how crazy that sounds? Like, if you already doing a lot by assuming there is one with no evidence, and now you can also assume there's only one based on what?
You can stop it there.
Before you go in on that, I know you're about to go in, but can we just pause for a minute and take note of how hard this man is laughing about this whole one God thing? It's so preposterous. I just want to take note of that right quick before we get into this point. But go ahead. I got a couple of things I want to say on that.
So he says there's only one God. Now, hang on. How do you determine that? So, okay, there was nothing. Let's just say you're right and there was nothing, and a God created this universe. But what tells you there's only one? Who told you that? Why do you think there can only be one? Gentlemen?
I got one line. If God exists, he doesn't need help.
There you go.
That's
well,
why.
so oh my goodness, man, and actually, so I'm gonna start there. I'm sorry, because I'm actually jotting down some notes here. I might come back to this later. So number one, I mean, to Alex's point, first of all, if what we're trying to do is give an account for what caused the universe, right? Then first of all, we can apply Occam's razor. I'm saying Occam's razor is this principle.
Who's a believer, by the way? Occam was also a believer.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
The principle is that you're not going to multiply causes beyond necessity. In other words, you're not going to attribute a cause. Excuse me, you're not going to attribute an effect to more causes than is necessary than to explain the effect, right? So if we have one cause that explains the effect, we're not going to lump on other causes because it's like, at that point, you're just, you're doing too much at that point. So you only need one cause to explain the effect. So if God accounts for the effect, i.e. the universe, then to posit or to suggest that there's another God on top of that, you're falling subject to Occam's razor. You know what I'm saying? We can cut that other God off based upon we only need the one. We're not going to posit more entities than is necessary, because otherwise you begin to make a theory to more complex than it needs to be, which weakens the theory. You know what I'm saying? It becomes more ad hoc. That's number one. So Occam's razor, I'll just throw that out there. That's number one as to why we refer to this as God. Number two, just the very notion of what it means to be a maximally great being. You know what I'm saying? When we're talking about God, it's classically defined. We're talking about a maximally great being, a being for which there can be no greater, right? Now, if you have a being that's you're saying is the greatest, if you will, it can be no greater. It's a maximally great being. Mind you, this is not just a concept that Christians throw around, but just in philosophical literature, this is the way that they talk about, God, particularly in regard to, Anselm's argument and so forth. But anyway, we're talking about a maximally great being. If there's another being that's more great than if there's a being B that's greater than being A, then being A is not God. It must be being B. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, it's the greatest possible being that's going to be God. And it can only be one of those. It can't be more than one greatest possible being. Now, I'm going to go a step further. It's because we got Occam's razor, we got a maximally great being. You know what I'm saying? Like those are two reasons why we can, and there's a lot we can say there, but from which you can kind of sketch out why there can't be more than one God. But let me throw this at you too. And I would shout out to Robert Koons. I'm saying he's a philosopher that I think a lot of people should get to know, in terms of his work. But he etches out this notion how, just to kind of give, it gets really technical, so I'm not going to go into all of it. But if you have, let's say if you had two beings, I'm saying that we're trying to figure out, okay, which one is, the greatest possible being, like which one is God, if you will. I'm saying, to put it simply, in order to be the greatest possible being, or the kind of being that is what we call non-contingent, not relying upon anything else, or if you will, I'll just kind of put it that way. If you got these two beings that are distinct from one another, there must be some property, I'm saying, that they had, that one has that's different than the other, that from which you can make that distinction. I'm saying, and whatever that property would be, I'm saying, it either is going to be a contingent property that has to be that way, or it's going to be a non-contingent property. I'm actually probably just had to put a link in the chat because I feel like I'm getting too wordy with it already. But the bottom line is saying if you got two different beings, then they can't both have contingent properties, or that kind of disqualifies both of them from being maximally great being, i.e. God. So one of them has to be a being that has no contingent aspects to its inherent nature. I'll just kind of leave it. I know it's like super wordy, and I apologize.
No, that's why the whole flying spaghetti monster thing, even though they're being silly, doesn't work because it's made of spaghetti.
Right. So I'm sorry for being wordy, but I at least want to illustrate the point that there are really technical arguments, though. You know what I'm saying? Right. That establish that there's only one God. We can even go further talking about gods and different possible worlds and how you can only have one and so forth. But the bottom line is there are several lines of argumentation, and you only need Occam's razor to prove it. Number one, to establish that there's only one God. Right. But nevertheless, there are very sophisticated arguments. So I go back to him just chuckling about it and just laughing. It's like, man, there are deep philosophical okay, it's funny. Well, okay, yeah.
Don't start nothing.
Don't start the pizza. You don't start with your pizza nonsense, right?
But there are deep philosophical arguments that are way above our pay grade, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Or certainly above Kevin Wesley's pay grade that seriously deal with this stuff. And so the fact that he's just chuckling about it as if it's like the most nonsensical thing, it just tells me again, this man has spent zero time studying this stuff. You know what I'm saying, like he doesn't know what he doesn't know. You know what I mean? It's not this crazy, outlandish, feelings-based faith. I just want to believe in Jesus type of thing to say there's only one God. No, there are rigorous philosophical arguments that on intellectual merit alone demonstrate why it's most logical to infer that
you're using words like rigorous, and you're gonna lose them.
You're gonna need Merriam-Webster.
You gotta need Merriam-Webster. I'm sorry,
bro. In one of my lesser moments, I was getting frustrated. I was talking with a Hebrew Israelite, and we were arguing not about this. And I, like I said, it's one of my less proud moments. But I said, look, bro, if I'm being honest, you're not even equipped to have this conversation with me. And I apologized later to him, and we shook up on it. But that's basically what this boys like. He doesn't. But this is why we do need to do this. And so I thank you, BK, for doing this, because he has an audience, a large audience, and they watched that video probably before he took it down. They were like, okay, thank you, man, we got it. Now we know. Now we know. We got the knowledge now. And that's how they're walking away. So C.S. Lewis said something one time. He said, we must, and he wasn't saying specifically apologies, but he basically like, we got to do stuff like this, if for no other reason that we're going to abandon our brothers to these uneducated heathens. Yeah. And that's why I'm going to, keep doing this as an apologist and keep doing what I do and why you guys do what you do. So
yeah, respect. Yeah. No,
likewise, bro.
Man.
Likewise,
man.
And with that, we're going to go to the last clip. So Adam, if you could go to make sure here. If you go to
I want to be clear, just so let's not be construed as mean-spirited. Listen, if you don't know stuff, that's okay. I'm not even close to omniscient. I'm not. Listen, I'm learning just like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not the issue. It's not a matter of oh, he don't know this, he don't know that. That's not where I'm coming from, man. Is that when you clearly are out of your depths in terms of your knowledge base and you're condescending. You know what I'm saying? That's the problem. And you're miseducating other people, you know what I'm saying, alongside with it. That's the issue.
And listen, and he can know. Look, I don't have a degree. You guys have degrees. I have a high school diploma and a couple college credits. That's all I have. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn, from the projects. So if I can figure some of this out, so can the spiritual life coach guru. You know what I mean? So the bar set low here. I just have a high school diploma, fam. Like, come on.
But you got access to every written work known to man.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, right. and slides to go along with them.
Oh man. But yeah, bro. Let's go. This could be the last one. Let's go to the 15-minute mark.
Okay, 15.
Scientists are impeccable.
15. I wanted to say something about that too, but I guess we'll skip past it. Well, I'll just make a real quick statement. He said that earlier he was talking about appeal to authority, and then after she made a claim, I think it was a claim about the one God thing. He said something like you might need a psychologist or a psychiatrist, which I think is interesting because he just made this whole big mess about appeal to authority, but he's prescribing her to go to somebody who's an authority on mental health to get help. It seems kind of contradictory, but okay. You said 15-minute mark, right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
We already there.
One more thing. Evidence is not a substitute for faith.
Oh.
Following God is not a matter of evidence or proof.
Evidence is not a substitute for faith. It cannot be, because faith means to believe. It means you don't know. Evidence means that's the fact, and you do know. So it cannot be a substitute. She is absolutely right about that.
It's a matter of the will.
This dude here, man.
Evidence is not a substitute for faith. It cannot be, because faith means to believe. It means you don't know. Evidence means this is a fact. And you do know, so it cannot be a substitute. She is absolutely right about that. Here's where she does fumble in her presentation, and they both don't fully have a understanding of biblical faith.
Right.
They both have an issue here, more so him, of course, but because faith, right, is believing loyalty. It's based on an experience or data. Right. A perfect example of that is when David faced Goliath. When Saul asked him, "You are just a shepherd boy. What makes you think you could fight this guy? He's been a fighting man since his youth." What does David tell Saul? "Well, I fought this lion, killed the lion. I fought this bear, I killed this bear. So I'm 2-0 when it comes to animals that should kill me. So now, granted, I've never fought this dude that has chainmail and a spear as long as a weaver's rod, and he has a shield. This is a whole different warrior. But based on what I already do know, I like my odds. That's what biblical faith is. It's not just jumping out the window to the unknown. It's sometimes going into the unknown based on what you already do know.
Right.
That's what biblical faith is. And it's also fealty. It's I am loyal to you. I have faith in you. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. But it's based on things, actual things, whether it's my experience, data. You know what I mean? It's like once I have that and I base a conviction on it, I now have faith in those things.
Going back to that example I used for the airplane, real quick. That's actually the reason we do it. That's why we get on, because we have the data that says you're more likely to die in a car crash than a plane crash. We have the data that says it is a safe mode of transportation, generally speaking. Right. So even though I don't know how everything about it works, I have the faith that I'm going to get on and make it to my destination. Perfect way to put it out. Now keep that same energy. That same energy.
Hold on. Ty Hammer says here, right? Because people like using this, right? They'll say, now faith is the reality of what is hoped for. The proof is what is not seen. Who is this being written to, though? People who already have believing loyalty, right? So it's like they already have this faith, and he's explaining that because you have this faith, you have this hope that you don't see. But it's based on something that you do see and have felt and understand, right? So that's, you know what I mean? So I just want to put that out there.
That's the key. And actually, I did a video with my man Tim Allison on his channel. I think I always mess up. Unapologetically Black, Unashamedly Christian. And I did a podcast where we talked about the intersection between faith and reason. And I just showed how there really is no necessary split between the two. And we got into the definition of faith. Now, I will say, I mean, to what's his name? Shout out to Veda Hedgeman in the chat. To Kevin Wesley's defense, I think often the church today does paint a wrong picture about what faith is, particularly if you come up with like Word of Faith, TDJs, Creflo Dollar circles. If that's what you are looking at in terms of faith, if that's where you've kind of gleaned your definition of what faith is, then yeah, you have a concept of faith or an understanding of what Christian faith is that does not align with the biblical perspective of faith is. The biblical perspective on faith, in terms of what the authors mean when they use the word faith, they're not talking about like blind faith or just believing where there's no evidence. Right. That's not what they're saying, and you can tell that based upon the contextual use of the word faith as well as the word faith itself. It's the Greek word, at least in the Greek, is pistis. In Hebrew, it's amana. In either case, faith refers to it's something more akin to trust. I'm saying when they're using the word faith, they're talking about trust in something for which you have evidence or reason to trust. That's really what it means. So even with the Hebrews 11, that's a perfect example. We don't necessarily have to spend too much time here, but in Hebrews chapter 11, if you look at the structure of the chapter, it says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now, using word of faith circles, that's all they read is 11:1. Right. And they don't get no further. It's like, oh yeah, you gotta have faith, brother. Okay, well, but if you look at the rest of the chapter, immediately after that, the author then gives you a history lesson from the beginning of the world on up to exactly. It's called like the Hall of Faith, if you will. And he kind of walks you through all these different people who obeyed God or had faith and so on and so forth. And, these XYZ results came of it. You know what I'm saying? And so the whole idea is on the basis of the fact that you have these examples of people who obeyed God, believed him, so on and so forth, and God did this. Now in Romans chapter 12, it says we have this great cloud of witnesses that you can stand. That's really what it's talking about. So Romans chapter 12 and the encouragement to stand for Christ and endure hardship and so on and so forth, that encouragement comes on the back end of discussing all the ways in which having trust in God, I'm saying based upon his character, based upon what he has done, you can have faith in him for what he will do. That's really what it is. It's not about blind faith. Right. It's about having trust in that which or someone whom you have good reason to do so. That's really what that is.
And we all got to remember, and I'm not saying people in the chat don't or whoever was saying this, but especially in certain Christian circles and even definitely outside of it. We got to remember, and this is why I've been doing so much work on hermeneutics in the last couple of years. There were no chapter and verses. So like, it's easy for us to quote Hebrews 11:1 and isolate that or isolate that. But that's not the way they would have read it. They would have read Hebrews. The whole thing.
Right.
So there, you can't divorce chapter 12 from chapter 11 or from chapter 4 or from chapter 5 or chapter, like it's all it's a package deal. So we get into this in the 21st century. Well, last 3 centuries, I'll say, but really in the last 100 years, really in the last 50 years, where we're able to, or where we have this, especially in the West, this inclination to isolate that particular verse to say a particular thing, to fit a particular narrative. But that's for the history of the church. 90% of the history of the church, nobody read it like that. Even when you go back and look at all the history of every apologist up to, like, you don't see, they made other mistakes. They didn't make that one though. And so that's something that's it's very recent. And one thing I was thinking about today is that, like you said, faith is not it's not blind. And I do agree with you, Adam. Like my mom's generation, I'll just have faith, baby, just believe. Like I tell parents all the time, I tell pastors all the time, if we keep talking to our kids this way, we're going to lose them. We're going to lose a generation. So that's the other reason I'm big in doing youth and young adult ministry. But biblical faith does not mean I don't know, so I'll guess, because he accused her of the Lord, the God of the gaps. Right. Biblical faith does not mean I don't know, so I'll guess. It means I trust, so I'll believe. But once again, as you both have said, I trust based upon evidence. Right. So it's not, it's that, God, you've shown me enough. And even though I can't quite see the next several steps, you've done enough. You've done enough already, like this, right? You've shown me enough already. You've done enough already. I got enough evidence upon which to go. My kids don't know everything about why I say what I say, but I have a track record where they say, Daddy's never led me astray yet. Don't mean I won't, but but so far he hasn't tried to hurt me or harm me. He's tried to protect me. Based on that, even though I don't want to do what he's asking me or telling me to do, I have enough evidence to trust him in this. Right. That's the same way we are with God.
Man. And you know what? Actually, it hadn't even occurred. That's a perfect point. Something you said kind of triggered a thought. I honestly hadn't thought about it till just now, but I think that we're going to kind of add a little precision to what China McClain was talking about. I think she actually does have a point in this sense. Okay, what we don't want to do is blur the lines between the two legitimately biblical applications of faith. Okay, on the one hand, you have faith in terms of having trust in someone or something based upon the evidence. Right. But like you mentioned, BK, there is this personal application of faith that has to do with giving one's allegiance or trusting, like basically giving oneself over to someone else based upon, evidence and so on and so forth. So it is the case that in terms of the first definition of faith, when it comes to just having faith that, Jupiter exists or something like that. I mean, like you can have evidence that and come to the affirmation that such and such is true, but that's a different kind of application of faith versus committing oneself to another. And it is true that when it comes to evidence, I can give you all the evidence in the world, and you might come to that first kind of faith where you give mental assent to the existence of God, even the Christian God, and yet you may not take the extra step to apply the other definition of faith or form of faith, as in putting your trust in and allegiance to, giving your heart over to that God. So actually, it is true that evidence is not enough in that sense. And that if we're being real specific, it is true that in terms of the kind of faith, the robust faith that God requires as is commanded in the scriptures, that kind of faith that really puts you in right standing with him doesn't come about just based upon the evidence. It actually is a matter of the will when you include that allegiance aspect of it. You see what I'm saying? So I think that probably is.
And again, there is an unknown variable, right? But it can't be just the unknown variable. It's because of what I already do know. I have confidence in going through this unknown variable. Right. So
I want to give a shout out to Relentless Pursuit of Purpose, because I think this is actually something I think he would resonate with. Because if you take it a step further, if you are say if you're an unbeliever, we do have, given the fall of man and the depravity of man, you do have the noetic effects of sin. I'm saying, such that, and that's just a fancy way of kind of talking about how the impact of sin upon us also skews and messes up our cognitive faculties such that we don't come to the truth and give us and basically align ourselves with the truth if in the manner that we would if we weren't impacted by sin. I'm saying now somebody like that, and I'm just kind of shout out to my precepts out there. I'm saying this is why regeneration is so important. I'm saying to be quickened in the spirit. I'm saying such that you can come into a knowledge of the truth. Basically nobody comes to Christ. I'm saying without the Holy Spirit's action. I'm saying so. I'll just kind of simplify it that way and say that it's a good reminder that when we are dealing with people, just education, information isn't enough. No. Right. Ultimately, if we're doing apologetics rightly, we want to be doing it in alignment with the working of the Holy Spirit. I'm saying such that, somebody can really be brought to the truth, because there is this element of the noetic effects of sin that corrupt both our cognitive faculties and even our affections, what we give our love to.
Well, if you will. Yeah. I have a real-time example of that because there's a friend of mine. I was talking to you earlier about it, Adam, about I've been reaching out to this friend of mine for the past 15 years. Mm. And I've seen him go through a whole bunch of different situations in his life. And I've been there. We try to get in there to study with him. We had a couple of false starts, because the world definitely was calling him more than God was. But this time it stuck, right? And he made that commitment. And earlier today, I was able to baptize him, So, but it's a 15-year friendship, right? So it wasn't the cosmological argument, even though that was part of it, right? It wasn't just us sitting down and looking at scripture, though that was a part of it. It was the 15 years of me being consistent with him. And I told him, I confessed, like, there's been plenty of times where I just wanted to block you. Because I will call you, you won't call me back. You was always busy. I'm like, forget this dude. Why do I care? But my spirit, God's spirit's like, no, give him some time. 15 years later.
Amen.
So, and to God be the glory to that. So
that's discipleship.
Praise God, man. Praise God.
That's where it should all come back to. Sometimes because I'm also a pastor, I co-pastor a church, and like, if I could spend my time just doing that, the discipleship aspect and the fellowship and growing it, like, that's actually a better use of, I can say better. That's actually in some ways a better use of time.
Yeah.
I kind of have to come down to do the other stuff because it does need to be addressed. Like, we got to address Queen of Food, we got to address Kevin Wesley. We got to do it. But
to get to the discipleship.
Exactly. Like, I wish we didn't have to do it as much. Right. It can be frustrating at times because you want to be able to be free to disciple and to help grow people in the Lord. But to something that Adam said, Jim Warner Wallace, Cold Case Christianity, he always said there's a difference between belief that and belief in. And he was a former atheist, as most people know. He came to Christ by examining the gospel through his police training tactics. But James says even the demons believe God exists. They don't believe in him as far as in a familial way. So there is a difference. And he uses this example. I don't know if he did when you were at Cross Examine, Adam. So he put the bulletproof vest on. He said, I believe that it will stop a bullet, but until it stops one, will I believe in it? Hopefully that never has to happen. But I'm just saying that,
I ain't trying to mess with it either way. But
nah, I ain't either. Right. But it's a very good way to illustrate that when you believe in something, when you believe in God, that governs how you do your life. That governs the reason we're on here right now talking about this till late at night, because we care that much.
Amen. And with it being late at night, we're going to wrap it up. I think we did a good job. Special shout out to Merriam-Webster. You know what I mean? She did her part. She did her part. You know what I mean?
Right.
To people in the chat, if you could do me a big favor, if you can definitely share this video with Mr. Wesley.
Yeah, share it with Kevin Wesley. Yeah,
because Adam would love to have a cordial one-on-one sit down with him if possible.
Of course. I mean, people can look at, man, like, Man, like if for anybody who watched my video that just dropped earlier this week with the Hebrew Israelite, I mean that's how I carry it all the time. Unless somebody gives me a reason to do otherwise, I'm a pretty chill guy. You know what I'm saying? I do want to have a talk with folks. I love the dialogue. You know, even when we disagree, that's what it's that's perfectly fine. You know what I mean? I think I might end up doing a part 2 to this video, BK. I might have some more bars in the chamber for him, so maybe I'll send that to him as well. You know what I mean? But with that being said, man, like I'm trying to think of whether I want to say this or not, but put it this way. I'll just put it this way.
Adam says the most messiest stuff on my channel. I just want you to know, Alex. He'll be nice, clean, pristine in his channel. He comes over here, mess.
Oh, I'm just everybody. You know what I mean? It's like anybody can get it on your channel. You know what I'm saying?
On my channel, right? Exactly.
But no, man. I mean, you know what? We just have to realize that I hope that he turns to the Lord. I really do. I mean, nobody knows. I hope that the man repents. I mean, I really want that for him. But even if that's not the case, there's a lot of souls out there, man. And actually, I am going to say it. This has nothing to do with. I know you are. This has nothing to do with Kevin Wesley, man. We got to cut we got to cut this infighting out. When it comes to our community, and by that I mean the urban apologetics community, along with those who matriculate in that community, kind of in about it, or somewhere in the constellation of our community.
Right.
We got to cut all this infighting out, because what's happening is while we're arguing over stupid stuff or things that maybe they're not so much stupid, but could be addressed behind closed doors or what have you.
Secondary, tertiary
things. While we're arguing about that, we got cats out here getting thousands and millions of views on nonsense, leading people astray, and we're talking about dumb stuff. I mean, like, we could be far more effective if we take our energy and target it where it needs to be targeted. I'm not saying we can't disagree. I'm not saying that there's never a cause to engage one another. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to legislate what other people do with their time or their channels. I'm just saying that there's work that we need to do out here, and we need to be about that work first and foremost.
And speaking of work, what is some work we can expect from you gentlemen in the immediate future? I would like to give Alex the first thing about that.
All right. Well, this has been a crazy busy week. This is my 3rd live this week, and I'm speaking for a conference in Kenya on Saturday.
Nice.
So I'm trying to create some courses, and once I do, y'all will know. But I'm trying to take it light on my videos in June and maybe July. But I do have next week. I have a part 2. If you saw, I did with KJ Scriven and Crystal and Quentin, and it was called Millenniums, Mysticism, and More. Now, another apologist friend of mine who I brought at my conference a couple of years ago, her name is Brittany Brown, and she couldn't make it that time, but she's going to be here next Thursday. So it'll be me, her, and Crystal going to do a part 2 of that.
Nice.
Later in the month, in July, I got Jerome Gay. I think you do too, BK. And then also, so Reasons to Believe sent me this book today, or I got it today, and I guess it's like an advanced copy. Ken Sample's new book.
Nice.
So he's coming on at the end of June as well.
Okay, I see the book flex, bro. I see you.
You know what I mean?
I got a book too. I had to buy this one though. They didn't give it to me for free. Andrew Loke. I just got his book on
nice.
Cosmological Argument. But yeah, I had to buy mine. Yeah, I don't have that kind of pull, man.
I don't have that kind of juice.
Nah, apparently not.
Nah, man. So yeah, that's what I got coming up. I do have a couple videos I'm working on solo, but I don't know when I'm going to finish them, so I'm not even going to talk about it yet.
Cool. And Mr. True ID, what kind of shenanigans are you be participating in?
Hey, well, Lord willing, man, I just decided, I think just yesterday, I figured out a way to bring the podcast back, man. So I'm bringing back the True ID podcast. It will return, refurbished. You know what I'm saying, doing things a little bit differently. So I'm going to have a lot more breakdowns on my channel. A lot more just the kind of stuff that we're doing here tonight, but more so in bite-sized pieces. I'm going to be doing a lot more of that, particularly on Thursday nights at 7:30. I'm trying to drop something for people to rock with each week. Just doing breakdowns like these. And I might start with just a part 2 of this breakdown right here, you know what I'm saying, of your boy Kevin Wesley. maybe next week, and then moving forward. Also got Eric Mason coming on the channel. I got Jerome Gay coming on the channel. Nice. Man, we got Harry Lennox. He's going to be on the channel. He's coming through. Got some really good guests, man. Got some really good guests. So y'all keep me in prayer. But definitely, like I said, I'm going to be bringing back the podcast, the audio version, souping it up a little bit, and trying to do things. Some stuff I can't say yet, but I'm just taking it to another level, man. We going up a notch.
Absolutely, I feel you. Yeah, I usually try to keep everything now to an hour, but there was just so much to unpack in this video that we had to, we had to go over time. But for me, tomorrow we have Chapter 7 of the book review of Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity of the Gospel. It's Chapter 7, Engaging Hebrew Israelites. And that'll be tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On June 3rd, I will have Damon Richardson on the platform to talk about his chapter from the book. On June 10th, I will have Jerome Gay speaking about his book. That's, I think, it starts the pre-order, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, we need to let people know. Yeah, what's today? Yeah, tomorrow's the 28th. It does go for pre-order. I guess like in 3 minutes, maybe. So I might.
Right? Basically.
When I'm talking to y'all, I'm about to hop on here right quick. Make sure I get my copy.
And then on June 11th, also tomorrow is, of course, the bodega, right after the book review. And then on June 11th, I will have Dr. Vince Bantu to talk about his chapter about Comedicism and the gospel. So, and other little things in between those moments that I'll be having, So any last words before we out of here, guys?
No, just I think if y'all don't know, well, it's in there, Relentless Pursuit of Purpose. That's my channel, and I appreciate you having me on, BK.
Nah, man. Yeah, you're a powerful brother, man. Gotta have you here.
Yeah, I just want to echo that, man. Thanks for having me. And I do this all the time, but I want to encourage, people who are listening, watching, whatever, utilize this information. I'm saying, play the tape back, learn this stuff, go study for yourself as well. So you can get even more in depth of knowledge here, and use this information. Find somebody to talk to about it. You know what I mean? And even this video here, share the video. If you run into somebody who's talking some Kevin Wesley nonsense, share the video. We got this book right here, Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel. If you were listening to this video and found the cosmological argument interesting, I've got a version of it in my chapter 11, on in this Urban Apologetics book. So you can cop that wherever books are sold. But yeah, just continue to study, man. Continue to get out there. Like it's going to take all of us to really accomplish this work that I believe Urban Apologetics as a community is called to. And we need to be about the business of soul saving, man, and getting out there and doing the work of the Lord. So, yeah, man.
Man, with that being said, it's Alex McElroy, Adam Coleman, BK Apologist signing off. Catch you later. Peace.